There's nowhere on earth quite like Dubai, one of the most popular tourist destinations on earth, with rugged, distinctive landscapes and sights that simply take your breath away. This is the home of the 7-star Burj Al Arab Hotel, and we'll be seeing plenty of high flyers today with some of the best marathon runners on the planet. 15 million visitors flock to this emirate every year. Numbers are still rising. Its sporting pedigree's top-notch too, world-class horse racing among the jewels in the crown, and some of the most iconic buildings on the planet. Even more spectacular by night. Stand by for some sporting fireworks in the next couple of hours. A very warm welcome to our coverage of the Standard Chartered Dubai Marathon 2017. I'm Trevor Harris, alongside veteran and highly experienced athletics journalist Pat Butcher. The weather conditions, it's 6:30 just coming up local time as we see the wheelchair racers on the start line. Around about 20 degrees, just a slight breeze. Pretty much perfect, Pat, in terms of weather for marathon running.
Yes, it's slightly warmer than expected, Trevor. It was going to be, I think, 18 degrees, but I've just heard it's round about 20, and it is a bit humid, but that shouldn't be too problematic. I mean, when Haile Gebrselassie ran this race in 2008 and did, a course record by about 5 minutes, it was much hotter at the end. It was full on sunshine, and he must have been really hot, but he still did just over 2 hours and 4 minutes.
Well, the wheelchair race, as you can see, underway. It's a small field, but it's a quality one, and we'll keep you in touch with events in the wheelchair race as we go through our coverage this morning. Let's check out the main marathon course, though. They head off in the same direction as last year, if you were watching our coverage, onto Al Sufa Road. They run past the Dubai College Junction, past the entrance to Palm Island, and then they make a U-turn at the one and only Mirage Hotel. There it is. And then it's onto the Jumeirah Beach Road. You can see the kilometre marks there, which tell you how far they are on the course. And this is quite unusual in marathon courses, Pat. It's pretty much a straight road, straight out and back. It's basically a straight out and back course, Pat.
Yes, it is quite unusual from that perspective, Trevor. I mean, most marathons are a circuit, effectively, a round course. But here it's one of the few which is effectively an out and back. There is something of a circuit when they start and when they finish, but that long stretch up and down the beach road, it's what makes it such a fast course, essentially, because it's absolutely dead flat. It's just like a racetrack.
And when they pass the Burj Al Arab again, they're nearly home. A left turn, and then it's 500 metres to the finish, just before the Dubai Police Academy. What a great sight that is. Let's have a look at the start list, and so much of the attention is on number 1 there, Kenenisa Bekele, who missed the world record by just 6 seconds back in September. And there's a little bit of speculation he might possibly break that today. It stood for about 2.5 years, Pat. It would be a fantastic thing if he could break it.
It certainly would. And at the press conference on Wednesday morning, a couple of days ago, I've never, in 30 or 40 years of athletics journalism, I've never heard anybody so confident about breaking a world record. Absolutely extraordinary. And he didn't just say it once. He said it 2 or 3 times. I'm going to break the world record.
Well, there's obviously some others who'll have designs on that. Tamirat Tola there, number 5. You can see how strong an Ethiopian presence it is. Tola, who's run 2:06.17. Raji Asifa might have something to say about it too. He was second in Paris a few years ago, also been second in Dubai. And there are a few Kenyans and a rare Belgian there, El Hashimi, number 14. It's a very strong men's field. Go down a little bit further, the Ukrainian Sitovsky, number 29. Enrique Laguise as well, and Mark Ruig from Spain, wearing number 38. And of course, there's a women's race that runs simultaneously here. So then we can have a look at some of the stars in the field there. Shure Demise wears number 1 again. It's Ethiopian dominance pretty much wherever you look. Meselek Melkamu, who's run 2:21.01, second here in 2014. Bekele also will have her followers here and a personal best here in 2015, 2:22.51. And a rare Finn there, Anna-Marie Hyrilainen, wearing number 12. A bit further down, the South African runner, Jenna Challoner, will wear 13. Worknish de Giefer, she's an interesting one actually. Marathon debut today. She's won 4 half marathons and she's consistently run under 70 minutes for those. We have seen in the past here in Dubai that debutants can be extremely competitive. There's Hyrilainen, Finn I mentioned. Some nervous moments here before the start. What will be going through their minds at this point, Pat? I mean, there are a lot of very experienced runners, but maybe a few nerves around.
Oh yes, I think before any race, if you're going to run well and you're expecting to run well, you ought to be nervous. I mean, even Bekele's nervous. He's pretty much not exactly got the race sewn up. I think McConnon, who won here 2 years ago, is going to be a very, very big threat to him. But nevertheless, you know, if you're not nervous, you're not on song, and you've got to be apprehensive about it, and they all will be.
And is there a danger that sometimes nerves can maybe get the better of you, maybe go out a little bit quicker than is ideal? Because, yes, they want to run a fast time, but if you burn yourself out early, that's a serious problem.
It is, and it can happen, but that's partly dependent on the pacemakers, of course. They've got to know exactly what to do. But they are experienced guys. There's some very fast marathon runners in there as pacemakers this year, and that's because they're not on absolute top form at the moment, and they may just volunteer because they'll get a backhander from Bekele, especially if he breaks the world record.
Well, if he does that, he's going to be a very rich man, because there's $250,000, that's US dollars, bonus if the world record goes. That's for the men's and the women's race. First prize in both events is $200,000. It is the richest race, the richest marathon on the planet. But there's honour at stake as well as dollars and cents here. Always amazes me, Pat, when you think they've got 42 kilometres to go and they're all trying to get a perfect position at the start.
Well, just to go back to your previous question about are they nervous, normally, in my experience, when the gun goes, that's it. You just forget all your nerves, you're concentrating on what you've got to do, and in fact you've got 2 hours or more to do it in, so there's absolutely no point in being nervous as soon as that gun goes.
And will Bekele know the pace he wants to run at? I mean, if they do go off ridiculously fast, is he going to be happy just to sit in, give them a 15-20 second lead if he has to, or does he want to be at the front?
Oh, well, he doesn't want to be very far behind the pacemakers, but he'll know if the pace is right. I mean, this guy knows what 3-minute kilometres are like, or 5-minute miles if you prefer. And in both cases, they're going to be running 2:55, 2:56. That's the sort of pace for a kilometre, and well under 5 minutes for a mile. And for any of the Joe joggers that have ever tried to do 5 minutes for a mile, these guys are doing 42.195 kilometres or 26.25 miles at less than 5 minutes a mile. Extraordinary pace. It is.
And you look at the world record, which is currently held by Dennis Kimetto, 2:02.57. His average pace per mile on that run, 4 minutes 41.5 seconds, which if you equate it to one lap of a standard outdoor track, he's running sub 70 minutes. 70 seconds, I beg your pardon. So just seconds away then from the start of the marathon. There we go. 2 hours or so ahead of them. And of course we've got all the non-elite runners following on behind. They've all got their own personal goals, but we, of course, will be concentrating on the elites. It's around about 30,000 competitors in total if you add in the 10k run, the 3k run, which is the fun run. And it's built up magnificently when you think that this is the 18th edition, started back in the year 2000, and there were fewer than 2,000, and now that number's around the 30,000 mark. So you've got to say huge kudos to the way this event has developed through the years.
Oh, indeed. In fact, I was here for the very first marathon and 10k, or fun run as it was back then. And I think there were 120 marathoners and about 250 fun runners. So, I mean, 30,000 now over, admittedly, 17, 18 years. It's become hugely successful. And I think the big turning point was back in 2008 when Haile Gebrselassie came here. Of course, Kenenisa Bekele's great record-breaking predecessor from Ethiopia. He broke the course record by 5 minutes, and that garnished so much publicity. I think lots of people, well, certainly here in Dubai and the UAE wanted to run it, and people from around the world wanted to run too. So he really put the race on the map, and it's just gone from strength to strength since then.
Yeah, he won it for 3 years in succession, and he still comes back as an ambassador, which is great to see. These guys just getting their little moment of TV fame as they go across the start line. You can see there's still plenty to get through. The reason, by the way, if you're wondering why we start so early, I said 6:30 a.m. local time, otherwise it just gets too hot. Certainly too hot for potential world record breaking time. So, of course, the elites will finish the men just after 8:30 and the women maybe around 8:50, something like that. But it actually has been a bit cooler of late, I was here last year for the race, and it was definitely maybe 10 degrees warmer.
Well, 10 degrees warmer than this morning?
Yes, it was. It was.
Well, it is a little warmer than was expected. As I said earlier, we were expecting 18 degrees, more or less right throughout the night and right up to about 9 o'clock. So both men's and women's leaders are going to be well within the parameters of taking advantage of those fairly clement weather conditions. But humidity is quite high at the moment, so I think that would be the biggest problem. And then when the sun comes up, the heat, of course.
Saw one of those fun runners just wheeling a pram. I mean, it's hard enough just to run it, let alone do that. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the pram. We'll have a look later, maybe. But it's a great sight. I mean, it's such an emerging sporting nation, Dubai. I mentioned the horse racing. You saw those wonderful equine pictures at the start of our broadcast. But obviously the Pakistan cricket team play here now as we look at the Ethiopian fan club. They were here 12 months ago. They do not stop singing ever during this race. 2.5 hours non-stop they'll be at it. I don't know if they actually rehearse, but they're incredibly in tune. They were here at about 5:30, so an hour before the start.
Well, you know, Trevor, I go to a lot of marathons around the world, and if there are Ethiopians running, as there almost inevitably are, along with their East African neighbours, the Kenyans, but the Ethiopians in particular, the local Ethiopian contingent are always out in force and always out in good voice, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners can hear these guys in the background.
Well, I guess when you dominate a sport as much as their countrymen and women do, it's not surprising, is it?
Well, I mean, they're rightly proud of their absolutely terrific athletes. As I said, 2008, Haile Gebrselassie came here, broke the course record by 5 minutes. He came for the next 2 years, so really underlined, the growing strength of the Dubai field. And I mean, there've been Kenyan winners in the past, but it's tended to be more Ethiopians in the last half a dozen years. And, of course, Kenenisa Bekele coming here just 6 seconds off the world record 3 months ago. Yeah, that's a great attraction.
So just showing you there, they're around about 4 seconds outside world record pace. The first K through in 2:56. World record pace will be 2:52. Not a major problem at this point, obviously, still very, very early. At what point, Pat, do you think we might get an idea if they were potentially on for a world record, or I should say Bekele, because it's unlikely anyone else can break the world record here today?
Well, I mean, just one point about McConnell, who won here 2 years ago. He wasn't going to come here this year, but he heard that Bekele was running, and he actually asked his manager to get hold of the race director and wanted to come because he feels he's in such good form. So on that point, Trevor, I think Bekele might have some opposition from his young compatriot, but I think halfway is going to give us a good indicator of how the pace is going. I mean, marathon runners themselves say that the first 35k is not exactly a stroll. I mean, you're running 42k, it's not easy by any manner of means. But the first 35k, lots of runners can accommodate that. The race begins at 35, so when we get to 35, I think things will unfold to the extent that we'll pretty much know who's going to be in the frame for winning and placing, and whether there's going to be a world record or just a very fast time.
Yeah, I was probably doing Sego Mäkinen a disservice because he's got a fastest time of 2:04.32. He won here in 2014 with the fastest time ever recorded by an under-20 runner. And I was mentioning earlier the prize money, $200,000 US. He actually bought a house in Addis Ababa and a new car, and it enabled him to basically become a full-time athlete. So that's what it actually means for them. It's not just a figure, that prize money. It has a massive effect for people like Mäkinen. He's only 21 now, and you mentioned the age gap. I mean, Bekele's 34, so he's 13 years his junior, Mäkinen, but certainly able to compete on a relatively level playing field here. He was third last year, Mäkinen, only 4 seconds slower than he was on his debut. And actually the other thing that we haven't spoken about, not just the world record, but the course record, which is currently 2:04.23, Ayeli Evshero in 2012, so that would have a chance of going too. And as you can see, they've speeded up on the second kilometre, just a second outside world record pace now.
Yeah, I mean, the pace in world record races over the last 20-odd years, when things have really started to hot up in professional marathon running, let's admit it, these guys aren't running for nothing. And you've mentioned the huge prize money that there is nowadays. It depends on the course. This is a relatively flat course. There are a few turns on it, but there are some slight inclines and declines, and that's going to make an effect on the pace too. So, I mean, over the years, just going back to your question about income, I mean, I've been watching Ethiopians and Kenyans winning huge prize money. They buy property, they buy farms, they buy hotels, for example. So they're all they're looking towards the future, and as you said, Kenenisa is 34 years old. He's approaching his sell-by date, but Carlos Lopes, the great Portuguese who won the 1984 Olympic marathon, was 37 years old. But he had a bit of a hiatus in the middle of his career, so I think that preserved his momentum, if you like, and his desire to carry on to almost 40 years of age.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if you were talking about, I don't know, gymnasts, you'd probably say they peak at maybe 20, 21. But with marathon runners, there isn't really a stricter correlation as that. They could be 21, they could be 35.
Indeed. And I mean, look, at 34 years of age, he was just 6 seconds outside the world record 3-4 months ago in Berlin. Kenenisa, that is.
Yeah, and he said he was really disappointed, didn't he, afterwards? I mean, it was a fabulous run, but he was disappointed to get so close and not quite do it. And we mentioned that record of Kimetto set in Berlin 2014, so 2.5 years ago. It's about someone took it off. About time someone took it off him.
Well, there have been periods, where marathon world records have lasted a decade. And that race, incidentally, was a great contest as well between Kenenisa Bekele and Wilson Kipsang of Kenya, who was a former world record holder before Kimetto, a record that was also set on that equally fast course in Berlin. So it was the contest, I think, that drove Bekele to such a fast time.
All the leading protagonists in that leading group that you can see, and as you can also see, I went pretty quickly on the third kilometre as well. 2:52. I can't believe they've stopped. No, I thought they hadn't stopped singing.
It's just that we can't hear them. Perhaps fortunately in some cases.
It's if you're wondering when sunup is, by the way, it's just after about 5:10 past 7, which in about half an hour or so, it'll turn gloriously into daylight. It's a unique feature of this race that they start out in the dark and finish in the sunshine, we hope. You can see, yeah, just the first hint of dawn breaking here.
Yeah, it's a bit like Singapore. I've been to that marathon, the same sponsor, incidentally, and that will start earlier. I mean, one of the problems with Singapore is that the humidity is so high, and I think temperature rarely, if ever, goes below 24 degrees Celsius in Singapore. So not super fast times there, and certainly not like the sort of time that we're expecting here this morning.
Just to give you some basic facts as we look at the stats again. Most popular city in the UAE, Dubai, around about 2 million, just over 2 million inhabitants. We're on the southeast coast of the Persian Gulf, one of the 7 emirates that make up the UAE. And when I first came here, which was quite a few years ago, I had this view that basically oil was the major finance driver. It's not the case. Only about 5% of the revenue comes from oil. It's tourism now. Finance, aviation are the main revenue drivers.
Well, I was surprised, Trevor. There apparently isn't a drop of oil in Dubai. It's all in Abu Dhabi, or the majority of it is.
Yep.
But obviously, in a federation, there is a profit sharing amongst the states of the federation.
Well, it's become the 7th most visited city in the world now, which is astonishing, really, and that's really happened in the last 15-20 years.
Well, when I came to the first marathon and the subsequent ones, I mean, a couple of the hotels that we were staying in were pretty much the only buildings on the street that we were in.
Right.
I mean, with the desert right beside. And one road in particular, not very far from here, it's now about 10 kilometres of showrooms, hotels, shops, malls, with a splendid new metro running alongside the road. And that was empty 15 years ago. So huge development in this part of the world over, well, the last 2-3 decades, and which has accelerated over the last decade or so.
Well, this is the Middle East's biggest mass participation sporting event. You saw the crowds on the start line earlier. The leaders have gone through 4 kilometres now. 42.195 kilometres is the exact distance of the marathon in metric terms, and they're still 5 seconds inside world record pace, as long as they're there or thereabouts. Remember last year, I think they were still inside world record pace at about the halfway point and then faded a little bit. So you can never read too much by it so early on, but at least they're on track at the moment.
Well, I know race director Peter Connaughton is more interested in the 5K splits, and that's going to be coming up soon, the first of those 5Ks. And that will give us a better idea, I think, of overall pace, because pace has really varied in world record races over the last 20 years. So as soon as we see the 5K, we can give you a more adequate comparison with both Dennis Kimeto's world record time of 2:02:57 and some of the preceding marathon world records.
You see Tola there towards the back of that pack. Temirat Tola actually won Olympic bronze in the 10,000 metres in Rio, and his best marathon time was set here 12 months ago, 2:06:17. But there's so many of these guys are all-rounders. I mean, Tola runs half marathons and cross country. They're not jack of one trade. They're masters of quite a few, some of these guys.
Oh, indeed. And Olympic bronze medalists in the 10,000 metres amongst these guys.
First water station. You saw Bekele there. He's currently in 4th place. He's right up there, which is exactly where we expected him to be.
Very fast time, Trevor, for that first 5K, 14:20. And just to give you an idea of how that stacks up against Kimeto's world record, in Berlin 2.5 years ago now, Kimeto did 14:42 for his first 5K. But I mean, it does tend to even out over the course of the race. But looking very good at the moment.
It's difficult as well, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned that time that the world record he set in Berlin, and I think I'm right in saying that the last 6 fastest men's marathon times have all come in that race. It's hard to compare kind of course to course because they've all got their eccentricities. They're all different.
No, of course. I mean, as we said, in this particular course, it's virtually an out and back, very flat along the beach road, which is a huge help as long as there's a group together. I think somebody getting away by themselves, there's a real onus on that individual to keep the impetus going. And if you're by yourself for anything up to 10k, the likelihood is that you're not going to be on world record pace because you need some competition, certainly until the last couple of kilometres. And that's what happened in Berlin when Bekele only got away from Wilson Kipsang, the former world record holder, in the last kilometre and a half.
If you're wondering, by the way, how all these fans keep up with the action, we've got 2 massive TV screens down where the grandstands are, one on each side. So that allows them to follow every second of the action as far as the leaders are concerned. And of course, they'll see them firsthand when they come back towards the finish line. They're only about 30 or 40 metres from the finish line, those supporters. Whoever's been making those Ethiopian flags has done a roaring good trade over the last few days, that's for sure. All the face paint as well, and the scarves, flags.
Well, they'd have to have been up early just like us this morning, Trevor, because it's only 6:45 local time right now, and they were here when we got here.
Well, it's kind of, there's no reserve seating in that part of the grandstand, but they just kind of reserve it for themselves every year. And no one else dares go in there unless you're an Ethiopian fan. But it's almost certain that they'll be celebrating a double victory in the men's and the women's race. We'll obviously keep you in touch with the women's race as that progresses. Probably not quite as obvious a favourite for the women's race. We talked about Bekele, Pat, but I guess Demise and Melkama would be the 2 obvious ones you'd look at, but there are a few others with claims as well.
Yes, very, very much so. There's our first shot to the women's race. We got a quick look at the Finn Rilainen just before we came to the main group here. There are a couple of male pacemakers in for the women to ensure it's going to be relatively fast. We're not expecting super fast times here. Of course, your co-commentator last year, Paula Radcliffe, that fantastic world record, 2:15.25. is not going to be threatened this morning. I'm sure we can state that unequivocally. But I would suggest a finishing time round about 2:20, 2:21. And that's the sort of time that Melkama and Demise are capable of, both of them.
We mentioned the men's world record's been broken quite a few times in the last decade or so, but Paula's record, which goes back to 2003, as we just look at the gap there with the 6K, 2:55, so we're kind of bang on world record pace at the moment. But people watching at home, Pat, might think, okay, why is it that Paula's record has stood for, 14 years now? It seems astonishing, and in fact she's still got the 3 fastest times ever run by a woman in the marathon.
Indeed. I mean, I was in Boston in 1992 when she won the World Junior Cross Country. She was never a great sprinter, the evidence of which is a lot of people will recall having seen her out-sprinted in Olympic Games, in World Championships, 10,000 metres on the track. But when she finally came round to the marathon, her true talent showed through. I mean, she used to do enormous amount of training. So she went from being a very, very good junior to being a superlative senior, not in the 10,000 metres on the track, but in the marathon. And that 2:15.25 has been unchallenged for, a decade and a half now. And I don't really expect that to be challenged for maybe even another decade.
Wow. So it could stand for like a quarter of a century.
It could, and athletics records have stood for that long. I mean, one of the most famous examples is Jesse Owens' long jump. the guy who won the 4 Olympic gold medals in 1936 in Berlin.
Yep.
Equalled by Carl Lewis in 1984 in Los Angeles. And Lewis himself was, of course, a terrific long jumper, but never broke the world record. Bob Beamon did that fantastic feat in 1968.
And then it took ages for Mike Powell to get it, didn't it?
Those both lasted exactly a quarter of a century.
Okay.
Jesse Owens, Bob Beamon, and Mike Powell's now dates back to 1991. Tokyo World Championship. So where are we? 16 years now. With the likelihood that that too is going to last a quarter of a century.
Spectacular sight, isn't it, as we watch the leading men with the street lights in the background, just starting to get a bit brighter now as we approach 7 o'clock local time. Those iconic buildings in the background.
Well, they've still got a fair time to wait until the winners come in, but as Trevor said, they can see all the action on the big screen. Well, they can see themselves at the moment, so that'll raise an additional cheer. But it has become very much an Ethiopian event over certainly the last decade, since Haile Gebrselassie broke this course record by 5 minutes. Incidentally, his time then, about half a minute outside the world record, was 2:04.53. And you know, such has been the acceleration of fast times here in Dubai that Gebrselassie 2:04.53 doesn't even merit a mention in the top 10 fastest times in Dubai now.
I guess that's progress, isn't it? I mentioned the men's course record, the women's course record, 2:19.31, Asel Thunurgu in 2012. So that's another figure to watch out for, to see whether potentially it could be broken today. Now you need a gold card or probably a platinum card to stay there. That's the 7-star Burj Al Arab, and I don't think I'll be checking in anytime soon.
Well, I went for a drive around it a few years ago, but you actually have to pay to get in.
That's right, you do. Yeah, you can't just sneak in for a coffee and have a look round, can you? Without paying.
Well, a couple of the Kenyan pacemakers out front there. There are no Kenyan contenders for victory this morning. And tucked in behind them, I mentioned him earlier, one of the pacemakers is actually a 2:04.52 marathon runner. That's to say he's run faster here than Haile Gebrselassie did when he broke the course record in 2008. But he's not on top form at the moment. So we're talking about Negese there. 2:04.52. He elected to be a pacemaker. Endeshaw Negesa Shumi. He was 4th in Dubai 2012 when he ran that time, but he won the Tokyo Marathon, huge marathon. Won Tokyo 2015. That event is coming up this weekend. So 2 years ago, one of today's pacemakers won one of the world's biggest marathon races. So they've got real quality there to help out, both young McConnell and Kenenisa Bekele, who, of course, we're all hoping, and he promised it, that he'll break the world record this morning.
Well, you mentioned Tokyo. I know it's nearly 4 years away, but obviously that's the venue for the next Olympic Games. But any kind of insight into what the marathon course might be like when we get to Japan in 2020?
Not personally at the moment. I'm not even sure that they've decided on the course. But what is interesting, talking about Japan, over the years they've had some terrific marathon runners, particularly women, winners both in Sydney and in Athens. Well, such is the interest in marathon amongst the leading contenders that the World Championships in London this coming summer, Japanese runners have actually been and run on the course in London, and there's preparation for you.
That's hugely impressive, isn't it? So we're nearly 25 minutes in. You can see it's now getting considerably lighter. They're getting even more colourful with every increasing drop of sunlight. And it is just about perfect conditions for these runners. There's hardly a breath of wind. Just looking at the palm trees, and there's just very faint fluttering of the leaves. mentioned it's around about 70 degrees, and I don't think it's going to get too much warmer for the next hour or so. The forecast was that we're going to have pretty much a cloudy start to the day, and then the sun's going to come out, but maybe not until these guys have long finished. Probably a group of about, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 15 that have broken away, with all the names that you'd expect in there. Bekele's in there, Mäkinen also. We saw Temirat Tola too.
The weather actually has varied here over the years, Trevor. I was here in, well, right at the early years of the marathon, and it was foggy and 10 degrees Celsius one year. We pretty much had to wait for the last 5K because the helicopter couldn't go up. We had to wait for them to emerge from the fog to discover who the winner was. And one of the years that Haile Gebrselassie ran here, he ran 3 years in succession, 2008, 9, 10, was a huge rainstorm in the middle of the race, so that slowed him down considerably when they were running along this same beach road.
Mäkinen, you can see there on the left-hand side of your screen, in about 4th or 5th at the moment. On the podium here last year, as we go back and look at some of the leading lights in the women's race. That's Ruti Aga nearest the camera on the left-hand side of your camera. 23 earlier this week. She was second in Vienna on a marathon debut last year, and then third in Berlin in a quicker time. So she's definitely an up-and-comer, Pat.
2:24 and a half, indeed. I mean, there's absolutely no reason why half a dozen of these women couldn't be getting down very, very close to 2:20 and even underneath.
Well, if they do better 2:19 and a half, that'll be the course record. We see Shure Demise right up there as we expected her to be. 4th here in 2015, a World Junior record. She actually turns 21 tomorrow, so we wish her many happy returns in advance because she gets the key to the door.
Well, this is interesting. There's a couple of local runners, I suspect, or even foreign runners trying to keep up with the women, and they're at the back of the group, being led by 3 pacemakers themselves, and these are the men's pacemakers, obviously.
Just looking at the 9K split there, 21 seconds, as you can see, inside world record pace, 26:05 for 9K. So we're getting towards a quarter of the distance now for this 2017 Dubai Marathon.
This is very impressive pace. But again, when we get to 10K, we'll give you a rundown of some of the comparative times of the world record over the last 10 years.
Not sure if Dino Safir's in that leading group. I have to confess I haven't seen him, and he's an interesting guy. He was second here back in 2012, then had a bit of a nightmare in the London Olympics, but he has had a couple of decent results last year in Ottawa and Barcelona, winning both those races. Fun, isn't it, how some runners just seem to go cold for a while and then re-emerge as a force in the sport.
Well, it's a long-held belief that 4 marathons in a year should be your absolute maximum, and maybe 2 if you really want to do very, very well. And in 2012, prior to the London Olympics, the Ethiopian Federation may well have made a mistake by choosing all 3 of the Ethiopians who both won and placed highly in this race, and none of them finished in London.
Well, there you go. There's the 10K split, Pat. 28:53.
Well, that is really, really impressive. I mean, Eliud Kipchoge, probably the world's leading marathoner at the moment, won in London last year, apart from Bekele, of course. In London, he went through in 28:37. That was an absolutely sensational time. And you'll remember, he didn't realise that he was so close to the world record by the time he finished. Of course, a very different course. London, he slowed down in the middle of the race. But go to the current world record. Dennis Kimetto went through in 29:24.
Wow.
So you're
way
talking,
inside that.
Yeah, indeed.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, obviously we mentioned vagaries of different courses, but one thing we can say, that is quick. That is really quick for 10K. Negese is, I think, up there in that leading group as well. Best time set here in 2013.
I mean, the longer the groups, well, both groups, men and women, stay together, the better. And ideally, if you could get half a dozen people in both men and women's races together at 35K, that would be the perfect springboard for the winners to start to make their effort towards the finish and a fast time, maybe even a super fast time.
Back with the leading women, who are just over half an hour into their race. And we saw Corin Jelena there, who's turned 30 last Wednesday. She's another one who started out as a track runner, 3K, 5K.
There has been a development over the last 5 years, I would say, where you will get young East African runners, maybe more Kenyans than Ethiopians, just going directly to the marathon nowadays. They don't race on the track anymore, and that's partly because there are so many terrific Kenyan and Ethiopian runners. There's just not space for them on the track circuit to get into top class 5K race or 5,000 meters races on the track, and there are very few 10,000 meters races outside of championships nowadays. So it's almost inevitable that you get young runners going directly to the marathon and making a huge impact.
There's one really interesting runner, she's just out of your shot actually. She's in about 7th or 8th, Rosa de Gege, who caused a huge upset by winning the Shanghai Marathon last year. She took 5 minutes off her personal best, and she also won in Odense earlier in the year. Now, people would think, how do you suddenly improve by that margin? 5 minutes is massive.
Well, I suppose it is 42K, and you do develop. I mean, even Bekele, who's run 4 marathons so far, said at his press conference, it took me 2 years to become a marathon runner.
Right.
And do decent times, but not earth-shattering. When I say decent, in his case, 2:05, 2:06. And in fact, he dropped out here 2 years ago, had an injury, and only lasted till 30K. So that's another incentive for him to come back here today and do a lot better.
Well, in fact, there's Jelena I was telling you about. She's actually in the chasing group on the right-hand side of the white top. So she's way further back than she would have wanted to be at this stage, only half an hour in, and you can see the gap.
I mean, that may just be her style. I mean, every runner has a different style, but she's labouring at the moment, and I would suggest when you're that far off the leading pack, you're not going to make it up.
This is the leading group. Obviously, that we know there's a few men in there, but certainly Shure Demise is there. Certainly Melkamu is there.
It's quite a smart thing to do for these less than elite guys to get behind the women, because the women are going to be running 2:20, and 2:20 for a relatively not elite runner from pretty much any nation is pretty good shakes.
You were telling me yesterday off air, Pat, story about the elderly gentleman from Canada who runs absolutely ridiculous times for the marathon. I think you should share that with a wider audience.
Oh, indeed, Ed Whitlock, an absolutely fantastic guy, born in England, almost 86 years ago. He's going to be 86 on March 1st, and I've known about Ed for a long time. And I just happened to get in touch with him before Christmas. He said, well, I'm coming back to see my sister in Surrey. Maybe we could meet up. I mean, very briefly, Ed, when he was 74 years of age, ran 2:54 for a marathon in Toronto in Canada, which is near where he lives nowadays.
That's just astonishing.
I mean, nobody else over the age of 70 has ever run under 3 hours for a marathon. And just to bring you up to date, at age 85, at the same Toronto Waterfront Marathon, he ran 3:56 about 4 months ago now, and still going strong. He's one of the great extraordinary stories in athletics. He's had the most sensational latter-day career in athletics for me.
Amazing. So 35 minutes in, and the leading men looks like they might have dropped a couple the last time we saw them. I'm sure there were more at the front there. Yeah, you can see that the chasing group in behind, a good 60-70 meters back from the leading group, and they're still, as you can see, some 12 seconds inside world record pace.
Well, the 11th K, Trevor, was dangerously close to 3 minutes in every world record marathon up to now. At least one of the kilometres has been 3 minutes or more. So I'll be very interested to see if they can maintain that sub 3 minutes. And if they do, yeah, we'll almost inevitably get a world record.
It will be a world record, yeah. Even I can do that maths. Yeah.
Well, this gives you a good idea just how fast these guys are running. I mean, most people watching here, even good club athletes, could barely run 1 mile in the times that these guys are running 26.
Yeah, well, that puts it into perspective, as does the fact that only Kenyans and Ethiopians have ever won the men's race. 7 Kenyans and 10 Ethiopians up to now, and I don't think that's going to change today either.
Mind you, it is thinning out a bit at the front there.
Yeah, definitely. Toner's at the back of that group. So still in touch.
And I think our first glimpse of the back of Bekele over around in about 4th or 5th position.
Yeah, he's always been in pretty much the perfect spot since they started at 6:30. You can see now we're approaching 7:10, and it's pretty much fully light. This is the chasing women's group, with associated men in there as well.
And I think you got the impression of how much more sedate the women's pace is, inevitably. I mean, despite that fantastic world record of Paula Radcliffe, 2:15.25, contrasts that to the men's world record, 2:02.57. So still a big gap there.
Burj Khalifa just on the left-hand side, about halfway down. It's about half a mile high, and it's got 57 lifts, which I can't even get my head around. 57 lifts. The amazing thing about it was that they started building it in 2004. By 2010, it was finished. Not too many countries can put up a building like that in 6 years. What a sight that is, and how different it is to what it was even 15 years ago.
Indeed. And I mean, the whole city itself has, seems to have sprung up from the desert over the last 20, 30 years.
Weekend here, by the way, is Friday, Saturday, which is why this marathon takes place on a Friday. Maximum number of participants and spectators. 3:13K, so more than a quarter in. Well over more than a quarter in now.
Well, our next checkpoint, serious checkpoint, if you like, Trevor, is going to be 15K, just to give us some idea. When he set his world record, Dennis Kimetto went through 15K in 44:10. And I'd suggest the way these guys are going, look at this, they're 40 seconds under his time at the moment.
Should we be getting mildly excited about this?
Well, I just hope they haven't gone too fast.
Well, I mentioned that they did do that last year, but you just can never tell. And certainly from Bekele's point of view, he would want, as you said, at least 5 or 6 of these guys to stay with him for as long as possible.
And he will know whether this pace is too fast or not for him. You know, and he'll actually be telling the guys, you know, slow it down a bit if necessary. But I mean, if he can keep going at this pace, I think we are going to see something extraordinary this morning.
Moline there you can see. That's actually his grandfather's name. Best time came here in 2014 when he finished 5th. It's actually his first race in more than 3 years. He turns 31 on Sunday. But it is definitely thinning out, isn't it? 2, 4, 6, there's about 8 or 9 now only in that leading men's group.
And when you think 3 of these are pacemakers.
Pacemakers, yeah. Which makes sense when you think about it. There are not too many men who can stand this pace. 40 seconds inside the world record at 13, 14 kilometres. Not surprising there's not a huge pack of them out front.
Well, quite simply, the pacemakers are world-class athletes themselves.
Kiprot and Kipruto there. Mäkinen on the left-hand side.
And a guy in there, Lemmer, that we haven't mentioned yet. He won in Vienna and Frankfurt in the last couple of years. 2:05.16 marathon runner.
Well, no change with another kilometre under their belt. Still 40 seconds inside the world record pace. That 12th kilometre was really quick. Just looking at the cumulative times there per kilometre. But they are certainly going extremely fast. Maybe too fast, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly at the very least, you'd think the course record might be under serious threat. They were only a second outside breaking it last year, and it has stood for 4 years. Abshiro's record, 2:04.23.
Well, this 15K is going to be interesting. As I said, Dennis Kimetto, when he set the current world record a couple of years ago in Berlin, ran 44.10 for 15K. So we could be anything up to a minute underneath this at the moment. Well, I say we, loosely.
Yeah.
They.
Indeed. That with the leading women. Melakamu and Demise still right there. Bekele as well, Tadalek Bekele, who ran a personal best here in 2015. She's twice finished 4th in Berlin, 2nd in Toronto last year, so clearly in form. Just on the right-hand side of your screen. Maybe I could pose as a cleaner or something, they'd let me in, I don't know. There must be a way.
A 7-star hotel cleaner.
Well, yeah, they just like to keep the riffraff like you and me out, I think. That's the...
And so far succeeding admirably.
Yes.
We can actually see the Verge from our commentary position here. We're over to the right of your screen, if you like, and there is the Long Beach Road up and down which they're going. That racetrack, so to speak.
Well, that gives you a very good indication of just how pancake flat this course is. And that's why it's absolutely ideal for fast times. Colour coordinated to a man and woman, aren't they?
Well, they're certainly livening up the morning.
Well, actually, that guy in the white jacket's rather let the side down. He's about the only one without an Ethiopian shirt on. They're okay, so they got the red, green and yellow. So nearly 3/4 of an hour into the race. The men going extremely quickly.
And we are well past 15K, so we're just looking for the time. 44.10, remember, Dennis Kimetto, when he set the current world record. Wow. 43.26.
That's insane.
Yes. Well, the pacemakers really shouldn't be getting away too much. They need to throttle back a bit here.
Yeah, you can see Kimetto just have a glance over his shoulder. Not their job to spread eagle the elites, really.
No, indeed not. I mean, that group ideally should be together. I mean, the three chasers are a good 10 meters behind the pacemakers, and then there's a bit of a gap to the next group.
Well, there you can see the respective splits, and the time for kilometres 6 to 10 identical to 11 to 15. Fascinating. Lemmer, as you mentioned, going nicely. Mäkinen in behind him. And Tola. And Bekele just shielded. He's just behind Tola at the moment. Still right in touch, obviously. He's not the only talented runner in his family, is he, Pat Bekele? He was fourth in the 10,000 metres in London in 2012, but he was beaten by his brother who got the bronze, Tariku. Also, I remember him running in the Great North Run in England, I think in 2013, and he beat Mo Farah, who's now a double Olympic champion at both 5 and 10,000 metres, 2 successive Olympics, by 1 second, I think it was.
And a terrific race it was.
Yeah.
Haile Gebrselassie was in that race too, and not very often in his career, albeit he was in the latter days of his career, that he gets upstaged. Finished third. Well, you know, I think Bekele is off this group, Trevor. He's not amongst those leaders. He's in the second group, I think.
Well, that's fascinating, because if he is, he's been dropped relatively recently, because we saw him in the leading pack a pretty short while ago. I wonder if we can get an idea of exactly how far back he is.
I mean, even if he's half a minute, as our producers are suggesting, behind, that is still world record pace. It may well be that he thinks that this is too fast, and it probably is, and he's running at a far more temperate pace.
Well, let's hope that that's what it is, and it's not a repeat of what happened in 2015, where he pulled up with an injury here and didn't finish the race, and that was his debut in Dubai. Tola nearest the camera in the centre of your screen, so there is no Kenenisa Bekele in that group.
And Mäkinen is still looking strong.
And Lemmer also. And Tamirat Tola too. Well, assuming Bekele is not injured, you know that some, if not all, of his runners potentially could come back to him. Although, how much of a lead he could give the likes of Tsegay Mäkinen is another question.
Well, I mean, on paper he's a minute and a half faster, or close to a minute and a half faster, and he's Bekele, that is, Kenenisa, is still operating at world record pace. So the suggestion is that this leading group have gone off too quickly.
So there you see 9 of them, and the 2 pacemakers out front. And as soon as we can find out exactly how far back Bekele is, we will of course let you know. Oh, there he is, running solo. Now, is that a problem at all in its own right, Pat, that he's running on his own now?
Well, when we were talking to him on Wednesday about how much the presence of Kipsang helped him towards that very quick time, he said yes, it did help him. And I don't know what he's pulling at his shorts there. I hope he's not indicating that he's got some sort of muscular problem with his left leg. But anyway, he said that yes, Kipsang's presence did help him because he's much more experienced marathon runner. He's a former world record holder. He'd also run in Berlin before. But he said, I can run fast without Kipsang or anybody else being the implication. And I mean, we can see the lead group there, but it's, well, given camera foreshortening, I would suggest they're about 200 metres ahead. And that is in the register of sort of 45 seconds at the moment, which would still be right on the pace that Kimetto ran when he ran his world record 2:02:57. So no cause for too much concern at the moment. But running by yourself so early in the race, I would be slightly worried. Yeah.
So 27 seconds now.
And sorry, Trevor, I don't think that's to Bekele either, because we could see someone between the lead group and himself, although it looked like he might be catching him.
You can see it's come back from 13th kilometre to now. I mean, that almost inevitable, the pace that they were going at.
They're still substantially under world record pace, though.
I mean, I guess if you were looking at it from Mäkkinen's point of view, in terms of him trying to win the race, disregarding world records and stuff like that, if he can get a sizable lead on Bekele, that's probably his best chance of getting across that line in first place.
Oh, indeed, because in the latter stages of that Berlin race, I think you might have put your money on Kipsang. I mean, he's got an absolutely terrific marathon record. He's also well over 30 years of age now, the former world record holder from Kenya. But Kenenisa, you know, you can't discount a three-time Olympic gold medalist and a multiple world champion and world record holder. And he really, every time Kipsang tried to get away, which he did about 3 times in the last 5K, Kenenisa just hung in. We got about 1.5 kilometres from home, about a mile roughly in English terms or Anglo-Saxon terms, and just ran away from him.
Yeah, just looking at it, it looks like Burhan of Ethiopia is between the leading pack and Bekele, because he's about 15-16 seconds off the leading group, and then I think we got Bekele behind him. So from Burhan's point of view, that really is the loneliness of a long-distance runner, with the pack ahead of him and the fastest man in the field behind him. Meanwhile, 2 pacemakers just get on with the job here. Lemmer looking very confident at the moment. You mentioned him earlier, Pat. He kind of went under the radar a little bit in the pre-race press conference and the general chatter amongst the perceived pundits, but he's looking pretty strong at the moment.
Yes, and so is Mäkkinen. I mean, a winner both in Frankfurt and Vienna last year. They're very much among the the top European marathon races. You know, not a big super fast field, but really any marathon victory gives you an indication of the potential of a guy, and here is Kenenisa. It doesn't look well. I don't know. He keeps touching his left thigh, so I just hope there's not a problem there, as there was, as you mentioned, 2 years ago when he had to drop out at 30k.
Well, that would be a huge disappointment if it were the case. Well, let's hope that it's not an issue that's going to prevent him from at the very least finishing. But yeah, he is just holding that part of his leg on a relatively regular basis. Just a check of the watch as well.
Well, that's interesting. He's past the other Bekele, if you like. That's with Tariku, his brother, and who's a stride behind him. Now he may have dropped back. I think it was. Oh no, I beg your pardon. It's Debele. I thought it was Tariku, who is also in the field. But this guy is a bit taller.
But it just a tad concerning for Kenenisa Bekele fans that Debele has caught him, because the last time we saw Bekele, he was kind of running on his own, and now he's got company.
Well, I'm not sure Debele wasn't the guy who was a few metres in front of him, and he's caught him. But once we get a good rundown of the gap between this leading group and the chasers. And there's one of the wheelchair athletes, incidentally. It's only a recent introduction here, the wheelchair race in Dubai. They're starting to build it up. So at the moment, there's only a handful of men and women in the wheelchairs. But actually, perfect course for a wheelchair race, incidentally. Flat and fast. Yeah,
well, one of them is the fastest man in the world in a wheelchair, John Cassidy from Canada. 1 hour 18.25. He did in Boston back in 2012. Unbelievable. Well, they've slowed considerably, as you can see. Those red figures in their off-world record pace.
And I noticed that the 16th K was 3:07, so we have passed the 3-minute marker for one of the Ks.
Yeah.
And that, in fact, is the one where we went from under world record pace to 13 seconds over. Well, Dereja Debele is helping Kenenisa Bekele, the big, well, huge race favourite. Not quite sure at this juncture how far behind the lead group they are, and he still looks okay.
And presumably, I don't know, at the moment, on a flat course, it's not like, you know, where there's twists and turns and you can't see the pack ahead of you. He will know how far behind he is. There you go, that's that 2:03.03, 6 seconds outside the world record that he ran in Berlin last year.
Which incidentally improved his personal best by 2 minutes. And that's why he said it took him 2 years to become a true marathon runner. Well, there is one guy adrift of the group. Unfortunately, it's not Bekele. Well, adrift to the extent that he's about 30 metres behind from that aerial shot. So I think Bekele is going to be at least half a minute back of the leaders.
Yeah, I think that's Berhan Nabu Tesfaye, who's in that kind of marooned situation, just off the chasing pack, which is arguably the worst place to be, really. And they've actually dropped him because they were 9. Actually, there still are 9 at the front, so he's obviously been there for a while, just off the pace.
Well, somebody virtually sprinted up to right behind the pacemakers, and then I see he's picking up a drink from the drinks table. So that was why there was that rapid acceleration. Now we will have passed 20k. Just waiting for the time there. There you go, 58.23. Dennis Kimetto was 58.36. So they're still looking good. The lead group, that is, for sub-world record pace, but they've dropped a good half a minute over the last 5k.
Yeah, it's the graph's going the other way now, isn't it? I think that's the point. It may transpire that Kenenisa Bekele's tactic of not going with that group proves the right one as we look at some of the fun runners in behind. And have been training for a long time for this. And just finishing it would be an achievement. Some of them, some obviously have specific personal goals, personal bests, certain times they want to better. So we're past the hour mark now. So for the men, around about halfway through, these are the leading women.
And it's interesting that things haven't, temperature hasn't risen at all, although the sun has just risen over to the east of us. So hopefully that won't make too much of an impact, because the men are going to be finishing in the next 65 minutes.
Yeah, well, I say it was the forecast that it would be predominantly cloudy for the certainly the first part of the morning. So that seems to be the case so far. A bigger group of women at the front than the men's pack. There are a few men in there as well, but...
And you may have seen they've just passed the 18 kilometres mark, so they're only about 3k adrift of the men at the moment, which is 10 minutes running.
Taghifa on marathon debut. Good to see her right up there. It's now the Ethiopian half marathon record holder. Actually ran the 8th fastest half marathon ever by a woman relatively recently. And I was mentioning earlier, Pat, that this event in particular, there's a bit of history of marathon debutants doing pretty well.
Yes, indeed. Looks as if Aoife is off the pace here, but there are 9 women still together, and it really has become an opportunity. This one of the first big races of the year for Ethiopians to make a big impact, and a few more so than Aile Abshiro back in 2012 when he ran what is still the course record.
It's still a little bit murky, even though the sun's now up. Dominates the skyline, doesn't it, the Burj Khalifa?
You can see it from pretty much everywhere. Good orientation point.
Well, getting even more strung out, aren't they, at the front now? It's got to be a good 30 metres front to back of that group.
Well, as you can see, the 7th guy, Mololigny, is 23 seconds off the pace. But the Kipruto as pacemaker, his time is still under the world record split of Dennis Kimetto from Berlin a couple of years ago. He's 12 seconds up on world record pace. But he, of course, will be dropping out, and it's going to depend on the guys behind him.
Well, there's the gap. You can see in the far distance the back of the leading group, and there's Kenenisa Bekele on the right-hand side. Hard to tell whether he's actually reduced it. I have a feeling he might have by a fraction, which would make sense when we've seen the split times that lead group getting a little slower.
That's still about a 30-second gap, I would suggest, but it looks as if Debele is helping him along to get back up to the leaders. And since they are slowing, as we've seen on the times, then hopefully he'll shortly be back in touch.
Lema looking really strong behind Kipruto, the pacemaker there, but it suddenly got extremely strung out. It seems to have happened in just the last 4 or 5 minutes. There's Not so long ago, they were running in a group of 8 or 9, fairly tightly packed. Not anymore.
Well, the next 10K is going to be really interesting and indicative, I think, of what's going to happen in this race. The pack certainly has split up. That's not necessarily a good thing, except for Lemmer. I mean, if he can keep this going in the wake of the pacemaker, who's going to be dropping out, I would suggest, at 25 or 30K. I mean, the longer he can keep going, the better. The 20K, as I said, 58.24 in contrast to the 58.36 that Dennis Kimetto did in Berlin. So we're still in touch with world record pace, but unfortunately Kenenisa Bekele, the big race favourite, is not in touch with world record pace unless he is really playing a really cagey game and is going to come good in the second half of the race.
Well, Emma comes from the same part of the world that Kenenisa Bekele does, and it's his third time here. It was fifth a couple of years back, fourth last year with a time that was nearly 2 minutes quicker. So there would be a certain symmetry to it if he got on the podium today.
Yes, indeed. Well, one guy we should give a mention to, we haven't mentioned him so far, is Wasihun. He's at the back of this leading group. So at the moment he's effectively third in the race because Kipruto is the sole remaining pacemaker for, I would hope, at least another 8-9K. There's Wasihun with Tola in front of him. So 2:05.54. He was fifth here last year, so he knows the course, and he certainly looks very easy at the moment. Well, as do all of this trio following Kipruto, the pacemaker.
Yeah, potentially a shock on the cards here in the men's race, albeit we're still only about halfway through. Women have gone through the 19-kilometre mark.
And this is a pretty good pace too. I mean, when they get to 20K, we'll have a better idea, and to the half, we'll get a better idea. But this is a much better race, effectively, because there are, I think, about 9 women with 1 or 2 male interlopers in there. We've got some pacemakers. Well, they've just passed 20K in 1:07, and this is a sub 2:20 time we're looking at here for the women. Oh, my goodness me.
Not what we wanted to see. Kenenisa clearly got a problem. It happened to him in 2015. And what a huge disappointment this is. Just when it looked like he was starting to get back into contention, the pre-race favourite is not going to win here in Dubai. What a shame.
And he's not even going to finish by the looks of it, Trevor. So there's very much a Dubai curse on Kenenisa Bekele. Dropped out here at 30K 2 years ago, and he hasn't even got to 30K. Just past halfway, in fact.
It must be so frustrating. You can see him just holding that. Is it the left thigh or somewhere around that region? But I mean, the problem is if there is an issue, you don't want to do further damage. Not at the start of the season.
Indeed not. It's a huge disappointment. You know, when he announced relatively late in the day, a couple of weeks ago, he was going to be running here, the interest in the world of athletics was absolutely immense. But unfortunately, it looks as if Kenenisa Bekele is having to drop out of Dubai for the second time in 3 years.
Well, they have superb medical facilities here. They'll look after him very well, but for them also, despite the smiles, they were hoping to cheer this guy across the line in about an hour's time. And they won't be doing that. It is that right thigh.
Well, as soon as we find out what's wrong, we'll let you know, obviously. But well, like the silly Ethiopians in contention, both the men's and women's races, so the crowd will certainly have something to cheer. But huge disappointment here in Dubai this morning, with Kenenisa Bekele, as you see him there, having to drop out of the Sunday Charlie Dubai Marathon yet again.
suppose that is one of the problems. As you get older, the injuries become more regular. But as I say, we'll bring you any details we get in terms of his medical issues. But this is the front, with the pacemaker leading from Lemmer, Tola and Wozihan in fourth at the moment, effectively third, obviously, because Kipruto's not going to be on the podium. And they're well over halfway now in this 2017 Dubai Marathon. And it's a hard one to call because Tamirat Tola looking pretty strong too.
Now these three guys look very good. We've lost Mekkonen, incidentally. The guy who, when he heard that Bekele was running, asked if he could come and run again here. And when we see the gap to the chasing group, I think it will tell us whether these are going to be the three men on the podium.
Well, that's a surprise, isn't it, that Mekkonen's been dropped? Because as soon as Bekele dropped out, you'd immediately kind of install Mekkonen as the favourite, but not the case, and the gap is significant, as you can see.
Yes, that's huge at this stage of the race, and the fact that you've got three guys following the pacemaker here, that's still a very, very good pace. And there is the unfortunate Kenenisa Bekele. Waiting for transport to bring him back to the finish area and to some medical help.
Not what they were expecting, although they have been spotted. As you say, he's still likely to get an Ethiopian winner in both the men's and women's races, but he's going to get a taxi, is he? I hope they're not going to let him charge him. Should give him a free ride, surely. So Lemmer, Tola and Wozihan in behind Kipruto, the pacemaker. Wozihan maybe just starting to feel it a little bit. It's dropped a couple of metres back.
And that can be decisive at this stage of the game. You know, it's very rare that a runner can get back from dropping off a leading group, especially when they're running at the pace that they are, which is still close to world record pace.
It's amazing how quickly it happens. A second ago was right there. Now you can see 15, 20 metres behind and struggling in terms of staying with the front two, or three if you include the pacemaker.
And it may well be that torrid early pace right up to halfway is now having an effect, certainly on all but Lemmer and Tola, who we hope can keep it together and give us a good contest right through to the end. Now, Tola, incidentally, we were mentioning earlier, was bronze medalist in the Olympic 10,000 metres in Rio. He's one of the rare examples of a man who, like Kenenisa Bekele, was still running on the track, well, in his case, very, very recently. So I'd suggest if it does come down to an accelerated or what you might call a sprint finish, at the end, he might have the upper hand, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, Lemmer obviously would know that. Try and give himself something of a gap. He's still waiting for a car of some description or an ambulance to take him back to the main medical area. Kenenisa Bekele.
Well, do you know they're still under world record pace?
Well, full marks to Kipruto. He's still going strong, the pacemaker up front. He lost his pacemaking partner some while ago.
And he will have been asked to go to at least 30k and just hang in there as long as he can.
You can see Wozihan there in the distance, falling further and further behind. And even with almost an hour's worth of running left, it's looking more and more like Lemmer and Tola might be fighting this out at the business end.
Well, unless they one or both falls apart seriously, there's little doubt that these are going to be the two guys contesting the victory at the end and the first prize of $200,000. Who knows? They're still under world record pace. One of these guys may spring an extraordinary surprise. Yeah, I mean, it has happened before. I mean, Dennis Kimetto was virtually unknown when he ran 2:02.57 in Berlin.
Well, if you look at it on pure figures, you would think that Lemmer would certainly have the upper hand, because his fastest marathon time is a full minute quicker than Tola's. We'll see how that plays out between now and the finish.
But they're both operating substantially faster. Yeah, they're both on 2:03 at the moment. So 2 minutes off Lemmer's best and 3 minutes off Tola's best.
Got all the fun runners, or some of them, assembling near the start line now. There's a 10k run and also a 3k run. It's a very busy morning for the organisers here, and they'll be as upset as anyone that they've lost their kind of star attraction. But just one of those things. Can't help injuries.
Indeed, no, I'm glad to see that Kipruto is throttling back a bit. I mean, if you've got a pacemaker, you might as well do the job. So Tola and Lemmer fitting in right behind Kipruto again. And our next big staging point is going to be the 30k mark. They went through 25k, or at least Kipruto did, in 1 hour, 12 minutes, 54 seconds against Dennis Kimetto's 1:13.08. So still 14 seconds up on world record pace.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, it would be a massive surprise if either Tola or Lemmer broke the world record. I mean, they'd have to improve, in Lemmer's case, who's closest to it, by 2 minutes. More than 2 minutes.
Be a bit of a surprise to their bank manager as well, I suspect.
A nice surprise, but yeah. So we're back now looking at the women's race, and some of those in this leading group include Rosa de Rege, who, as I mentioned, won the Shanghai Marathon last year. No surprise that Shure Demizi is there.
Well, this is great that they're still all together. Yeah, the longer that this group can stay together, and they're running pretty fast. They're operating at sub 2:20 pace, so we might well get a women's course record here. And given that the men's record is 2:4.23, we're still on, despite the disappearance through injury of Kenenisa Bekele, the great hope for this morning. We're still on for a couple of course records here.
Yeah, I can't actually see Meselek Melkamo in that leading group. It was one of the favourites, and she was second here a few years ago.
In fact, the half was 1:10.47, so I might have to revise that very optimistic forecast. We're looking at a finishing time around about 2:21 for the women.
Yeah, so they've got about an hour or so of racing left. But just to repeat, Melkamo I don't see in that leading group. Shuko Chinimo did her debut in Dubai. Won a couple of marathons last year in Vienna and Mumbai. In fact, in Mumbai she improved her personal best by nearly 5 minutes, and then she took another 3 minutes off it in Vienna. An Ethiopian woman actually has won this for the past 5 years. And interestingly, Russians won the first 4 editions. Durangulova a couple of times, even over and Vermitina. What's the current state of marathon running, Pat, in terms of European performers? We talked obviously about Paula Radcliffe earlier, but that's kind of ancient history now, I guess. But what about any Europeans in the forefront of marathon running at the moment? Are there any?
Well, they've pretty much the rest of the world has been hit out of the park by the East Africans over the last 20 years. Once they started taking marathon running or long distance running seriously in the 80s, 90s, and a good indicator is the World Cross Country Championships. You know, I mean, it's been wall-to-wall Kenyans and Ethiopians, since the mid 80s, and that's the event other than the marathon itself which gives you a good indicator of the state of long distance running. I mean, basically from 800 meters through to the marathon in any given year, say the top 100 performances, that are going to be over 50% Kenyans and Ethiopians. So they really hugely outdistance collectively the rest of the world. And it's almost been a conveyor belt, producing youngsters. We talked about Ayele Abshiro coming here. I think he was 21 at the time in 2012 and running what is still the course record, 2:04:23. When you've got somebody just coming out of the mountains, if you like, in Ethiopia in his case, and in Kenya in many other cases, I think a lot of the European athletes are just put off.
Wheelchair race, they're getting right behind them, the spectators, so you could hear the whooping and hollering. It was Rafa Botello, looked like he was out front there.
Well, it's interesting, you mentioned Josh Cassidy earlier on. The elite race coordinator told me last night, Paul Mosley, he said, well, Josh hasn't wheeled those sort of times in the last couple of years. It's going to be between Rafa Botello of Spain and Patrick Monaghan of Ireland.
Oh, look at this finish.
And of course, with the race director being Irish himself, Peter Connaughton would love Monaghan to win, of course.
Well, it looks like he might prevail, but there's still not very much in it. After 42 kilometres of endeavour, there you see the time they're going to be around 1:23.
Well, they did start 5 minutes earlier than that clock, so it's certainly under 1:30. And that is Paul Mosley, the elite wheelchair race coordinator.
So Botello wins for Spain. And Monaghan second for Ireland. What a great finish, though, to the wheelchair event. Well, let's hope that grows in stature as the main marathon has since it was first run back in 2000. So here's the chasing group with Mäkinen at the head of it. But the last time we checked, the gap was pretty sizable. And even for a runner of Tsegay Mäkinen's ability, going to take a real effort for him to get back on terms with the leading duo.
Well, something would have to happen to them drastically. They'd really have to fall apart, the two leaders, Lemmer and Tola, for these guys to catch him. And there's Tola, there's the trackman. Rio bronze medalist at 10,000 metres behind Mo Farah, who we mentioned earlier. Yet to make a successful transition to the marathon himself, incidentally, Farah. promising or threatening to do so in the future, but we'll see what happens.
Well, that might
him.
potentially change in terms of getting a European in a prominent role in marathon these days. We'll see. Just seeing how far the gap between Tola and Lemmer is now.
I always like this camera angle because you can really see how fast the guys are going here. I mean, they're still operating at 3-minute kilometre pace or below.
Well, Lemmer's been dropped completely. So now, with what, an hour and 25 gone, you'd say it's Tola's race to lose.
Oh, indeed. And at the moment, it really is a case of by how much Tola is going to beat his personal best, which, as you mentioned earlier, 2:6:17.
Yeah, and that was here last year when he was fourth. So it looks like he's going to improve dramatically on that, both time-wise and potentially with a gold medal and a cheque for $200,000.
Now he's almost at 30k, and depending on how much further than 30k the pacemaker can go, Kipruto that is, the Kenyan pacemaker, it will still help Tola enormously, and we're also going to get a 30k time, which will give us a comparison between what Tola is doing here in Dubai and what Dennis Kimetto did in Berlin in 2014 when he set the current world record of 2:02:57.
Yeah, so just a couple of seconds inside world record pace at 29 kilometres. Well, there's Lemmer, so you can see exactly how far back he is. And you wonder now whether he is going to be susceptible to the likes of Mäkinen coming up from behind.
And given that there are still 12k to go, he's in some danger, I would suggest.
So those two have now reached the 30-kilometre mark. So as you say, just 12k's left. And that's the end of the pacemaker. So now it's all down to Tamarat Tola.
And he's 1 second outside of the pace that Dennis Kimetto was running when he set the current world record.
And I know some of your vast knowledge, Pat. Can you remember how long the pacemaker lasted for in that race?
Most races expect the final pacemaker to go to 30, if not 35.
Right.
And I can't remember, quite frankly. I mean, it might have been a couple of kilometres more than here, but the onus is on Tola. But he looks very good.
Yeah. So now we've got a situation where Tola's 20-odd seconds clear, and Wozihan and Lemmer are racing together, and Mäkinen will be some distance behind them, but potentially making up some ground. But it's Tamarat Tola's race to lose here. He certainly looks confident. No signs of any distress at all. Smooth running action. Tallish man. And I guess as much as anything else, it's about concentration really now. Just don't make any mistakes, don't do anything silly. And in about half an hour and maybe 35 minutes time, we'll have a gold medal around your neck.
Well, and as you suggested, Lemmer has been passed by Wozihan, who was dropped a lot earlier, but he's hung in there. And as you can see there, that's suggesting that's a 4-second difference with Kimetto. We've gauged it as 1 second. That's Tola, of course, in the lead. Still looking good with 12k to go. But Wozihan is trying to ease away from Lemmer, who seems to be responding.
Well, was he? I'm trying to lose Cisse Lemma. Lemma just about sticking to him at the moment, and a bit further back we'll find the likes of Segai Mekinen. So an hour and a half gone in this 2017 Dubai Marathon. We're going to get a somewhat surprise result in the men's race, partly because the big pre-race favourite, Kenenisa Bekele, had to drop out after about 20 k's with an injury. Segai Mekinen, who would have come in as second favourite, not even in a podium position at the moment. But it just shows you it can be an unpredictable sport. We've seen many surprise winners in the past. Looks like we're going to see another one this morning.
Well, it looks as if Tola, and there's the Ethiopian cheerleaders, it looks as if Tola from Ethiopia might be translating that track form from his bronze medal in the 10,000 metres in Rio to a super fast marathon time.
Yeah, well, they were fairly downcast, those supporters, when they saw the shots on the big screen of Bekele having to drop out, but they're cheering again now as we cross over to the leading women's group. And this is a much more difficult race to call. Obviously they're 2 or 3 kilometres behind the men in terms of where they are in the race, but plenty in with chances here.
Certainly a good race on here in the women's event. I mean, Tola well away in the men's. He'd have to drastically fall apart to lose this race now, whereas the women's race, it looks to be any one of half a dozen could win this.
Yeah, well, I was mentioning earlier, Rosa Dereje, the surprise winner in Shanghai, she's still up there.
And there's Melkamo right in the middle of that pack, probably the tallest of that group. She's still looking pretty good. She was a great track and cross-country runner too, incidentally. We're talking about Tola's 10,000 metres track pedigree until just this year, and that sensational Olympic run in the women's 10,000 metres until Rio. Melkamo had been the African record holder for 10,000 metres for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, isn't she? I think she's one of only 5 women who've ever broken the 30-minute barrier for 10,000 metres. There's about, I think there are 8 of them in that leading group. There are still a couple of men there as well. Hard to call.
This is a great race. I mean, this looks terrific. And they're all going for it. They all still look really good. Mind you, 40 minutes left to run.
Ruth Tiaga still there. She's on the right-hand side, right at the front. And once again, we've got the same kind of disparity of ages that we saw amongst the leading men. Arga's only 23, and we've got Demise, who turns 21 tomorrow, and then Melkamo's 31.
I mean, there's absolutely no reason why a world-class marathon runner can't be still running super times up to the age of 40 nowadays.
Tebebu just off the back of that pack. If she can potentially close up, she'll certainly increase her own prize money. Just doesn't want that gap to get any larger than it is at the moment. So now we're back with Temmeret Tola, who's leading the men's race by a considerable margin, and that personal best that he set here. He ought to break with ease today.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the 35k time, and that is going to be a great indicator. As you said earlier, it is a race to lose, and he certainly doesn't look in any great discomfort. Well, anything more than you would have having already run about 33 kilometres. You know, there's a fresh breeze now. It's actually, it seems cooler than it was at 6 o'clock this morning.
Well, yeah, I've actually brought a jacket with me, which is not something I do very often in this part of the world. I'm glad of it at the moment. It is a little bit chilly. What time are we now? We're just past 8 o'clock local time, and you can see that I think any thoughts of the world record been put on hold for another 12 months. Those last 3 kilometres, 30, 31, 32, 4, 12 and 21 seconds behind world record pace respectively, and of course it's no coincidence that that's happened since he's started to run solo.
It's almost inevitable that when the pacemaker dropped out, and I mean he does have a substantial lead, he will know that. Nevertheless, he's not giving up his efforts. He just knows that he's got reserves to call upon, and he's well on his way to victory.
We've mentioned that some of the fun runners, Pat, do like very specific training regimes building up to a marathon. Can you give us some idea of how the pros do it? How do they build up for an event like this?
Well, certainly. I mean, Tola's a very good case in point. He would substantially have to increase his mileage, or the number of kilometres that he runs every week and every month, to be able to accommodate the 4 times the distance of the 10,000 metres on the track. I mean, one of the things, just advising the general public, and everybody seems to want to run a marathon nowadays. I mean, my advice would be, don't run a marathon for at least a year when you start training. You've got to be sensible about it. I mean, these guys would be running 200 kilometres a week. I mean, it sounds extraordinary, does it? You know, 20, 25, 30 and more kilometres every day at an elevated pace. And you've just got to get that base training in to say that you can endure the distance. There's a reason it's called endurance running, and it means that you've got to get the time in on the training.
Women's wheelchair race winner just across the finish line.
That's Margriet van der Broek of the Netherlands. So she will have done what, round about 1 hour and 40 minutes. I mean, a lot of talk about sub 2 hour marathon. I mean, Bekele himself said that's not going to happen for some considerable time. Although there are projects to try and run under 2 hours, and it's not going to be done legitimately, I would suggest, for at least another 10, 15, 20 years. But look at the wheelchair people. They can go around a marathon course in 1:20 or under 1 hour 20 in Josh Cassidy's case.
I mean, the strength in their arms that they have to have is just unbelievable, isn't it?
Oh, indeed.
So the 2 wheelchair races are over. The men's and women's races coming towards the business end, and you'll probably see during the rest of our coverage some other runners. We've got a 10k race that's starting shortly, and a 4k fun run as well. Big drive to get the local population here in Dubai into any kind of fitness regime, whether it's regular gym attendance or running, road running.
Again, that side camera just gives you the great impression of speed, or it gives you a clearer idea of just how fast these women are running in this case.
It looks like we've got a little breakaway group here, which includes Shure Tumise. There you can see it. So the gap's about, 20 metres at the moment, back to the likes of Bekele and Melese. So still in touch, but the gauntlet's been thrown down to them. Round about the 30k mark in the women's race.
Missy is back in the mix there, and it looks as if Melkamu, who was probably co-favourite, has dropped off the pace. Demissy was probably the marginal favourite, and that's her in the white outfit, and De Geffer up there with her. Worknesh De Geffer.
Well, it would be a lovely 21st birthday present for her, wouldn't it, if she were to win here? Nice big check. Mentioned she ran well here a couple of years ago. Broke the World Junior record. She's finished top 10, top 10 at the Boston Marathon since. And she's won the last 2 marathons in Toronto as well.
Well, the way she accelerated into the table to get her drink suggests that she's still pretty frisky, and has got a few metres over Demissy at the moment.
I think De Geffer is the interesting one. You know, marathon debut.
Yes.
Because you see so many runners who have really impressive half marathon times, and she's a case in point. You just wonder, can they translate that kind of running into the full distance? Well, we're going to see in the next 40 minutes or so. Meanwhile, Tola continues to go about his business in ruthlessly efficient style. Certainly not coming back at all to the chasing pack.
And he should be close to, if not past the 35k mark. Well, it's just come up on the screen there. Let's look at his time. Dennis Kimetto ran 1:41.47 in Berlin when he set the current world record, and I think we're going to be a bit, in fact, somewhat substantially now. Tola's going to be outside of that time. 1:42.34.
But he will know that he's just 7 kilometres away from the biggest result by a distance of his marathon career. He mentioned he got an Olympic medal in Rio, but this will be something else, and this is what he's presumably going to concentrate on for the foreseeable. He's only 25, Tola, so you could say not potentially at his peak yet.
Well, he's virtually assured of a victory, unless something drastic happens to him. It certainly doesn't look like it. And his chase now is the course record, 2:4.23. He's currently operating at round about 2:3.50 pace, but he has been slowing. I mean, almost there's a minute there. Look, 1:42.34. And Wasihun went through at 1:43.32, so 58 seconds.
Yeah, last we saw, Wasihun was running with Lemma, wasn't he, for second and third. So we'll keep you in touch with the battle for the other medals, but as you say, Tola with a minute lead and an hour and 3/4 nearly into the race. It's his to lose. Well, there you go. Wasihun has dropped Lemma. He's now got a near half a minute lead in second place. I think the fascinating thing will be whether Mäkinen can make any inroads into Lemma in third place. And I think if you'd suggested at the start of the race today, Pat, that our first 3 would potentially be Tola, Wasihun and Lemma, you might have got a few raised eyebrows in response.
You wouldn't have had many takers on a bet there, would you? Well, at 35k, Tola was ran about 45 seconds, 3/4 of a minute behind the pace of Dennis Kimetto when he set the world record of 2:02.57 in Berlin 3 years ago. But Tola is still on course for a course record here in Dubai this morning. And the record, incidentally, set in 2012 by Ale Abshiro, 2:04.23.
Yeah, nearly went last year, just a second outside it. In fact, initially, the clock showed that they had beaten it, and then it was adjusted to 1 second outside the course record.
Well, number 4 there, Jigsaw, we've not mentioned him at all. He was nowhere near being among the favourites at the start of the race. He's 2:20 behind Tola, but he's firmly in 4th position there.
Yeah, so Mäkinen doesn't look like he's going to have any chance of getting onto the podium. A disappointing day for him.
But not so disappointing, or not half so disappointing as for Kenenisa Bekele. I mean, so confident that he could break the world record, yet he's had to drop out of Dubai for the second time in 3 years.
Well, big day ahead for some of these fun runners. The 10K start is imminent. 10K in old money, what is it, about 6 miles or so. So they had to do a little bit of training, just turn up and run 10 kilometres. But obviously a nice kind of way into distance running, or middle distance running, I guess this would count as. And some of these runners might potentially fancy doing the marathon either next year or some future date. Big thing for companies, you can see a lot of them come coordinating in the same shirts, a lot of corporate involvement in the 10K run, which is good to see, and a lot of them are raising money for charity as well. That's helping themselves get a little bit fitter. And rather like the marathon, the participation rates in the 10K run have gone up, well, off the scale to where it started. Just 1,000 took part in the first one in the year 2000. Now it's over 15,000. Well, it's no small beer, the prize money on offer today, and Tola's only around, what, 20 minutes or so from collecting a cheque for 1/5 of $1 million. Always a nice way to start the year.
And he looks terrific, doesn't he?
Well, that smooth style has not altered at all, has it? Slowed a little bit once the pacemaker dropped out, but you'd expect that. But certainly there's no sign of any issue, no sign of any distress. He looks confident, relaxed, and he's actually going away from his nearest pursuers.
Well, he's got a lead of about a minute on Wasihun, his colleague from Ethiopia. Tola's got a best time of 2:06.17 that he set here, finishing 4th last year, and he's going to beat that time by at least 2 minutes this morning. Our next checkpoint is going to be 40 kilometers. We're about 5 or 6 minutes away from that. But at that juncture, he'll have just 2.195 kilometers to run.
Got the ceremony for the wheelchair race. And what a fabulous finish it was too.
It certainly was.
So much mutual respect between these guys. Botelho, though, coming out strongest today. How far ahead do the top class marathon runners plan their season? So if you look at Tola, will he have decided already like what he's doing for most of the year marathon wise?
Well, I suggest that things will change drastically after this victory. He'll be sitting down with his manager to decide what to do next. I think race promoters around the world will be on the phone to his agent to get him into their race. I mean, a good example is Bekele. I mean, Jos Hermans, his manager, said after he finished so close to the world record in Berlin 3 months ago, he said we waited a couple of weeks just to see how he was going to recover, and although they didn't announce his inclusion in this field until a couple of weeks ago, they pretty much decided 2 weeks after Berlin 3 months ago that they wanted to come here. So I mean, you really should be planning months ahead for a marathon. I mean, this is serious business. I mean, you don't run 42.2 kilometers lightly at an elevated pace, and really you should look to be running, I would say, 2 major marathons a year. Now, I mean, Bekele, he's supposed to be running in London. I mean, obviously that's in some jeopardy now, and he had talked about potentially coming back to championship running and running in the World Champs in London this summer, but I would suggest that that's probably off the plan now.
Yeah, I mean, it was always an issue whether he'd actually get picked, because obviously that's not down to him, that the World Championship, he can make himself available, but no guarantee the selectors would pick him.
Well, I mean, if he'd run anywhere near to the world record or his Berlin time this morning, they'd be daft not to have picked him. But in big jeopardy his immediate future. Well, there's your debutante, Trevor. Looks as if she's on her way to victory too.
Yeah, this is an incredibly impressive performance from De Gever on debut. Obviously they're 2 or 3 Ks behind the men, but even so, it looks like she's got a decent cushion there.
And she looks very comfortable. She's got 9K to go.
Screen telling me that Demise is in second currently, but the gap looks significant. Well, this would be another big story.
She's also got the benefit of a pacemaker and one of the male competitors right alongside of her.
Well, that shows you, doesn't it? That's a big gap. Very big gap. I mean, just looking at the debutants, some of her form. I mean, she has run well in this part of the world. She won at Ras Al Khaimah in a half marathon, which is one of the other Emirates here. There's Demise, just labouring a little bit.
Well, with camera foreshortening, I'd say that's at least 100 metres gap. And once you drop off at this stage of the race, it's 9 times out of 10 you won't get back to the leader unless something drastic happens to that leader. Wow, great form. She looks terrific.
I mean, bear in mind also that I mentioned $200,000 for the winner, but there's decent prize money beyond that. So every place towards the top end that could potentially be worth much gold, even without the world record, which is safe in both the men's and women's today. So Tola looking ever more confident as he gets ever nearer to the winning line. An hour and 55 exactly now. I think he can start to smell the victory now. And it must be a great feeling after nearly 2 hours of running. You got yourself a lead of a minute.
Oh, I should think so. And he's into his 40th K now, so just over a couple of kilometres to run. I mean, we'll have a fairly clear idea at 40k what his finishing time is going to be. He's going to be outside the world record, obviously, at this juncture. Kimetto ran 1:56.29 in Berlin in 2014 when he set the current world record, and I think that Tola's going to be outside maybe a minute slower than that. But then I think the course record is his objective now. I mean, he's got the race won. He's just got to keep it together for this last 3k, or last 2.5k, and it's just a case of can he break the course record?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it's really concentration, just to not make any stupid mistakes from here on in. Course record is 2:04.23, so suspect he might have to go some to get that, but you never know. But certainly his personal best, it looks like he's going to beat that.
Oh, a good 2 minutes off his personal best, I think.
Getting louder and louder, the Ethiopian cheerleaders in the stand opposite our commentary position, because they know that fairly shortly they're going to be cheering yet another of their countrymen over the line.
Well, he's coming up to the 40k mark shortly.
When they see, or when the leader sees the Burj Al Arab, they know that they are virtually home. Just to mark your card on the course, they're going to make a left turn, or Tola is shortly, make a left turn at the Madinat Jumeirah junction, and then he'll have around about 500 metres to the finish line, which is just before the Dubai Police Academy.
Well, that gives you some sort of idea of the difference in pace between men and women. De Geffer has just passed 35k in 1:57, and Tola will have passed 40k about a minute back.
Should say also, by the way, that the prize money this Dubai Marathon is exactly the same for the men and the women, $200,000 each for the winner.
So Demisi almost half a minute behind Trevor, and I would suggest, as with Tola, that De Geffer has got this race to lose now. Not such huge gaps as in the men's race.
But what a debut performance potentially. If she's across the line first in about 20 minutes time, it'll be much less than that for Tola. Remember, his personal best before today, 2:06.17.
So 1:57.33, and let me see, 1:56.29. So he's about 64 seconds behind the current world record. So he's still on the course record pace here.
Well, that'd be a nice bonus for him. Not just the win, but the personal best and the course record inside the last 2,000 metres. Wasi Hun doing really well. The stick in there behind him.
Exactly 2 minutes behind.
So he's just been going further and further away in the last, 10 kilometres of the race, even since the pacemaker dropped out. He looks behind him, but I don't think there's too much danger there at the moment. Certainly not in terms of Lemmer catching him.
And it really is a case of whether Lemmer has retained third place. Well, the interest now is can Tola break that 2:04.23 course record that stood since 2012?
They'd get a magnificent view, wouldn't they? The residents in there looking out the window.
We need binoculars still.
Is that where your helicopter lands at the top there? That heliport, yeah.
If only.
Well, these must be magic moments for Tola. Just past the 2 hour mark in the race. Absolutely no danger at all. Around about 1,000 metres to go. I wonder whether he seriously thought this was going to happen when he woke up this morning, probably at about 3 a.m. local time.
Well, you know, that bronze medal in Rio in the 10,000 metres was a good indicator. As long as you put the training in, if you can get a bronze medal in the Olympic Games at 10k, you can run a good marathon. There are 1 or 2 people who've never really transferred their 10k potential and even half marathon in some cases into the full marathon. But by and large, if you're a good 10k runner on the track, there's no reason why you shouldn't be a good marathoner as long as you put the hard work in.
Well, he's certainly done that, and it's paying off handsomely this morning, because just after 8:30 local time, they'll have the finish line virtually in sight, metaphorically if not literally.
And Trevor, I'd suggest he's going to break the course record here. I mean, he's at about 41.2, it's going to be 42.2, and he's only got to run 3 minutes for his last K, and he's broken Ayele Abshiro's course record of 2:4.23.
Well, we'll keep a very firm eye on the clock as he head towards the finish line. Crowds have built up steadily since we started at 6:30 this morning. We saw the pre-race favourite Kenenisa Bekele sadly drop out with injury. Tsegay Mekinen not the force today that we've seen in the past, and it's left the way clear for Tamirat Tola to completely dominate the race. He lost the second placemaker at around about the 30-kilometre mark, but he has been frankly in a class of his own since then. So we're just coming up to the world record time, 2:02.57. The course record, 2:04.23. He's going to absolutely smash his personal best, that is for sure. 2:06.17, so as Pat was saying, he's going to take a couple of minutes off that. But the only remaining question is, can he finish in the next minute or so and beat the course record? He certainly won't be short of support when he gets near that finish line, because the Ethiopian fans in full voice, that grandstand is absolutely packed. There is literally no room in it. They're all waving flags, they've got the balloons and the scarves, and this is why Tola coming home on his own to claim victory in the 2017 Standard Chartered Dubai Marathon. He's still got about half a minute on hand if he can break the course record. For the first time straining, just trying to get over that line in the best possible time. And the course record has gone, and he's smashed his personal best by more than 2 minutes. Fabulous run from Tola.
Well, an unofficial time, Trevor, of 2:04.11. We'll update you on that one. So a good dozen seconds off the course record. Terrific run by Tola.
And there is no one in sight on the horizon behind him. Here comes Wazihan now around the corner. This will be a tremendous result for him as well in second place. Not sure Tola could quite believe what he's actually achieved this morning. What a performance. You think, as you said earlier, it was only, what, 4 or 5 months ago he was on the track in Rio, winning a bronze medal, 10,000 metres. Now he's started on the road. Now here comes Wazzy Hunt. No danger at all to him either in second place. And this was a brave effort, because at one stage he was a significant margin behind Cissé Lema. But Lema faded. Wazzy Hunt got stronger. He couldn't live with Tola. But he's going to take the silver medal and the prize money that goes with it. He's getting a huge hand as well. Lema has managed to hang on to third place, which means, as we suspected, Tsegay Mekkonen's going to finish out off the podium here. And the winning margin is more than 2 minutes. Tola has absolutely destroyed the field. He's run well here before. And he's never been on the podium. And that's all going to change. Moulay Wazzy Hunt, the 23-year-old takes second, just inside 2 hours and 7 minutes. And he'll look back to see Lema halfway down the road, trying to make sure of that bronze medal.
So a gap of 2.5 minutes between Tola and Wazzy Hunt, Trevor. That's not a bad margin of victory. He started going away from his pursuers around about 25k. Pacemaker dropped out at 30, so he was on his own for the last dozen kilometres, but a worthy victory, and broken his personal best by over 2 minutes.
Well, Cissé Lema looks to just about be holding off Jigsaw, who's also run a race way above expectations, you'd have to say. Jigsaw trying to close, but you can see that previous shot just foreshortens the distance a little bit. Lema looks safely home in third. So he's been fifth in 2015, fourth in 2016, and symmetrically he's going to finish third in 2017. Over the line he goes, just ahead of Jigsaw, and then there's a huge gap back to the rest. Way outside his personal best, incidentally, Lema. But there's the man who's making the headlines. His is the picture that's going to be on the back pages in the morning, all over the internet and on TV right around the world. We strongly suspected an Ethiopian would win. We just didn't probably think it would be him.
And I think that torrid early pace has taken its toll on pretty much all but Tola. I mean, 2:04.11, he's broken the course record, he's set a personal best by over 2 minutes, but given that this race regularly has finishing times in the 2:04, 2:05, 2:06 bracket, the fact that the second man did 2:06.46, Wazzy Hunt, and the third man 2:08.03, you've got 2 minute gaps between first and second, second and third, so I think that early pace was rather too fast.
Yeah, we suspected it as much, but at one point I think they were 40 odd seconds ahead of world record pace, weren't they, which probably tells you all you need to know. Well, back to the women's race, which obviously is approaching its own conclusion. And Tigiffa on debut. at the, what, 2 hour, 10 minute mark. Looking extremely powerful. Just looking at my screen, it appears as though Shure Demise is second, and Arage Diebrugel currently in third.
And she's got about 3k to go, Trevor. So, yeah, it's a good 100 metres still, I would think.
Yeah, Demise trying hard but not making any inroads into Worknesh de Giefer's lead. And she's running out of time. As I say, we've got, the last we checked, Diebrugel was back in third place. And she came here with some pedigree as well. Finished second in Paris and Chicago.
She's got about 10 minutes of running left.
Well, obviously any time she sets will be a personal best because it's her debut marathon, but looks like the time's going to be reasonable, so you've got to get a selfie with the winner.
And anything close to 220, which she is going to be a superlative debut.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think the women's course record 2:19:31, so that puts it into context a little bit.
And she's going to be in big demand across the world, also in the other major marathon races.
Well, you talked about a production line, and it just shows another young performer, first marathon, wins one of the main marathon events around the world.
And there's a view of the Dubai Palm.
Yeah, it's actually an artificial island, and I'm told that they used 7 million tons of rock, and they had to place each one individually with a crane, and it got signed off by the driver. Must have taken a while. Must be very difficult, mustn't it, being an Ethiopian Olympic or World Championship selector, because you've got an embarrassment of riches. So you can see that in second place, Demise making absolutely no inroads at all through 39 kilometres in 2:11:40.
So finishing time around about 2:22 at the moment. Yeah, under that, and that will be a really excellent debut.
Well, while De Giefer goes about securing victory, got a plethora of fun runners milling by the start line for the 10k run. There you see it, and this train will go on for a long time. You can see how colour coordinated they all are. As I said to you, there's a lot of offices that kind of do this as a company thing. Don't see too many of them dressed as penguins or whatever, do you? They're not stupid. Normally much warmer than this. I don't think you want to be running even 10k in a penguin suit.
And certainly not a deep sea diver's outfit, as somebody in London does.
Didn't it take him about 4 days or something, didn't it?
What, 6 days? Something
Yeah.
like that. Very elegant but forceful running from Worknesh de Giefer on her debut.
Yeah, just to put a bit of meat on the bone, so to speak, as far as De Geef is concerned. Gone 4 half marathons. She consistently has been running under 70 minutes. In fact, her half marathon personal best, 66.14. That was in Prague last year, and that is quick. And she's now the Ethiopian half marathon record holder. And she's run the 8th fastest half marathon ever run by a woman. But there's always that issue about how that kind of form will translate to the full distance, and we've seen it today. And she's answered every question that could possibly be asked of her, and in some style too, especially in a field that included the likes of Shouré Demissé and Nezhalek Melkamu.
Well, that graphic, Trevor, tells us Demissé is only 10 seconds behind, so I think she is making inroads.
Okay.
And we've got, what, less than 2k to run now, so so she'll still have to go to catch De Geef, and she's running so forcefully. I think she is still on her way to victory.
Yeah, well, there you see it. That's what 10-11 seconds equates to in terms of distance. So as long as De Geef doesn't collapse, then Demissé shouldn't be able to catch her. But it's never over till it's over, even though we're inside the last 2,000 metres now, the women's race. I mean, just to put it into perspective, 2:16.35 the current time. Paula Radcliffe's world record, 2:15.25, so she finished a minute ago. And that was set, as we said earlier, back in 2003. Yeah, Brugal still hanging on to 30. I say hanging on is not the right expression, because she's fully 30 seconds clear of Bekele in 4th place. So it's just a question of whether Demissé can possibly produce any kind of fireworks to derail the Urknecht De Geef bandwagon.
I think it was about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, Trevor, we had an absolutely terrific men's finish. There were 5 guys in somebody's photo frame shot at the finish line.
That doesn't happen often.
Well, not after 42.195 kilometres it doesn't.
No, and it certainly hasn't happened in either of the races today. So exactly 2 minutes and 18 seconds. And De Geef still looks in complete control. Gaps around about 10 seconds back to Shouré Demissé. We're not going to get a course record today for the women. That's 2:19.31. But I don't think she's going to care too much about this. Marathon victory on debut worth $200,000 US. And also, you could argue, more importantly, just the kudos that's going to come with it, establishing herself as a genuine world-class marathon runner at the first attempt.
Well, it's certainly going to qualify her for appearance money in some of the world's other top marathons. I mean, she's assured of $200,000 here if she stays ahead of Demissé, and that seems highly likely at the moment.
But it just shows that it's not a predictable sport. I think if you'd suggested that De Geef would win the women's race and that Tola would win the men's race, well, suspect I would have thought that highly unlikely, but it's not proved to be the case. It's been a thoroughly professional performance and an extremely mature performance for someone in their first race. Doesn't appear that that gap between her and her nearest pursuer, Demissé, is shortening at all.
No, in fact, it's lengthened. I think Demissé's effort has petered out She probably got within about 70, 80 metres of De Geffer, but when she could see that her young compatriot wasn't relenting, I think she settled for second place now.
A big prize money on offer for all places, apart from the fact it's 200,000 for winning, 80,000 for second, 40,000 for third, 20,000 for fourth. So De Geffer's going to make the turn shortly, and then she'll be 500 metres from home, and there is no danger at all. It's not been a predictable women's race by any means. Demise and Malkamu came in as first and second favourites respectively. But Worknesh De Geffer has had other ideas. And who knows what a force she could go on to be in women's marathon running. 26 years of age and coming home unchallenged. Just about see Demise has turned the corner. But another excuse for the Ethiopians in the crowd in that grandstand opposite us to start their cheering again. We might see a smile in a minute from her. She knows that victory is hers now. The first time she's run a competitive marathon, and she has taken down one of the big events of the year. Hugely impressive. As impressive almost as it's been unexpected. But another name to go on the Dubai Marathon scroll of honour as Worknesh De Geffer comes home unchallenged to win her first ever marathon. Time's going to be inside 2 minutes 23. She's always been up in that lead pack, broke away, and they have not been able to live with her. The Ethiopian has been superb. Worknesh De Geffer wins her first ever marathon at the first attempt. Just over 2:22 and a half. There's the smile. And Demise looks like she's going to hang on for silver, and she just had an anxious look back, and she's got a clear breathing space between her and Yebregual in third. So Demise takes second. Looks like she's more than happy with that. And just behind her, Elise comes in for third place. Well, fabulous performance. Final reflections from you, Pax? I know you're going to leave us shortly.
Well, Ethiopian 1, 2 and 3 in both men's and women's races. I'm going to hand over to Kenenisa Bekele's manager, Jos Hermans, who's joined us here in the commentary box, Trevor, because apparently there was an accident at the start, which we all missed, which caused Kenenisa to fall and injure himself, but Jos Hermans is here to tell you all about that.
Well, it'll be fascinating to hear from Jos. We're just getting him mic'd up, and we'll speak to him immediately. De Geffer, what a performance from her first ever marathon. Well, I am delighted to say that Jos Hermans joins me now, and of course, Jos, we saw the pictures of Kenenisa Bekele having to pull out the race at about the 20k mark. Just explain to us exactly what happened. He had a problem there was an accident at the start, was there?
There was 5-6 athletes apparently fell down at the starting line. When the gun went off, there was no warning before the gun was supposed to go off. All of a sudden there was the start. Kenenisa and some other was pushed from the people from behind. He fell down, injured his arm. Of course, he tried to run, but he couldn't run anymore because of the way he fell down. He rolled over. People several people pushed him down again to the ground, and so he had to catch up, and he just never worked anymore. He got a problem with his calf probably. We don't know all the details yet. He's not even here, but we like to see the footage because we want to see what's happening at the starting line.
Well, I have to say, we didn't see anything at the start, so it must have been kind of off camera, but clearly it was a completely unintentional thing at the start.
Sure, no. The thing is, I think there was no countdown.
Right.
So the starting came out of the blue, and then he was expecting probably the gun, and there was no gun, there was only the horn. So this is confusing. So somebody from behind probably panicked. I heard even that they were trying to see if it's a false start to bring the people back. But that didn't succeed. So I know for 2-3 other athletes they never even could start the race.
And so he's got a problem with his arm and with his leg, has he?
Well, we haven't seen him yet. He was bleeding in his arm.
Right.
You can see in the race, and he was limping because it was not. He fell down, rolled over, and he hurt his. We don't know exactly. For sure the calf, but maybe the calf problem comes from the hips or the back.
Because we didn't
hurt
see
himself, and of course it was straight world record pace.
Yeah.
So you never get the time to get easy to adjust.
Sure. I mean, we did see him on more than one occasion during the race. He was looking like he was holding his leg like he had a problem. So obviously he's really disappointed.
Oh, yes, incredible because it's today perfect conditions. Only 70% humidity. The temperatures there was a little bit cloudy, so it was covered. The winner course record. He's a very good athlete, but Kenenisa, should be a big step ahead of Tola. So it's really frustrating.
And he was so confident as well. He said in the press conference about breaking the world record, and obviously a lot of people have come out to see him. It's one of those unfortunate things that happens in sport.
Sure, but of course we have to look and evaluate for next year. I mean, because in most marathons you make the countdown, 10, 9, and then you know what's going to come. Then the gun is going to come. I never heard a gun. I only heard the sound of the horn. Even but okay, we were maybe 200, 300 meters ahead of the start, so we couldn't see. It was still dark, so I don't know. Maybe it was not even on camera.
We was talking before about. Competing in the London Marathon, possibly the World Championships as well. So I guess those plans are on hold until we find out the extent of the injury.
Oh, no, the planning is still to run London. London was always in the planning, whatever was going to happen here. So no, but we have to see if how serious is the injury. Hopefully, it's not too bad. The good thing is he was able to run, so it was not like he. But is it a rupture or is it just a contusion? He was pointing, his arm, but we didn't know because we didn't know he was falling. Later we heard that 5, 6, 7 people athletes fall down.
Well, I mean, we can only obviously hope that he's okay.
Yeah.
Can I just take you back to a few months ago when he came so close to breaking the world record? Were you surprised that he was able to run a time as fast as that? I think it was 2 minutes faster than he'd ever run before at marathon.
Absolutely, no. I was surprised that in Berlin he went for the Ethiopian records from Haile Gebrselassie to 2:03:57. And you run a low 2:03, so close to the world record. So that was not expected. And that's maybe that's why he's so keen to do it now. He's 34. He's not the youngest anymore. You want to grab any chance now that you can do it, and that's the frustrating about today. But Berlin was fantastic, and it was a big motivation. That his shape was the same as Berlin or even better today. That's why he was so confident. Because Kenenisa is not somebody to play bluff. He's not arrogant saying, "Oh, I will do it." That's so frustrating if this is happening with the falling over.
He's 34 now. I mean, how much do you think he can achieve in the next, presumably, 2-3 years that he's got left at top level?
Talking to him, he's motivated to go on. He wants to break the world record, and then the only thing missing is the Olympic title in the marathon. So he wants to go to make it all the way to Tokyo and run the marathon there. So the next 2-3 years, we're going to have fun.
Well, listen, we really appreciate you joining us and explaining what happened, and please pass on our best wishes. I mean, no one wants to see anyone, especially someone of his stature, have to pull out of a race. One of those unfortunate things, but once again, thanks very much for explaining it to us. At least we know what happened now. Thank you. Well, so now you've heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Well, Josh Herman's explaining exactly what happened to the pre-race favourite Kenenisa Bekele, and we wish him well. It didn't sound from what Josh was saying as though it's megally serious. He's still saying he's keen to run in London. That's obviously only in about 3 or 4 months' time, so every possibility that will happen. And of course we will have the presentation ceremony for you in due course, but we're just watching yet more of the fun runners go past the start line. There are literally thousands of them. You can see way back in the distance. It is astonishing how this event has grown since the first one in 2000. And there are around about 30,000 runners all told today, if you add together the marathon, the 10k, and there's also a 4k fun run as well. So terrific numbers. So many corporate runners. There are runners obviously doing this for charity, and most of them would have had a look at some of the pros earlier. A few late limbering up exercise. If you're not loose by now, then there's a problem. 10 kilometres, around about 6 miles in old money. They will be staying around for the presentation. They haven't given us a moment's peace all morning. Someone needs to invent a word for what happens to people when they see a camera. It's just a never-ending stream of people, and we wish them all well. This company idea is a pretty good one because it kind of breeds solidarity. No one's going to not want to turn up and let the side down, so to speak. Well, let's have a look at some of the race highlights then. And this is what we couldn't see. There was an issue at the start. You just heard Kenenisa Bekele's manager, Josh Hermans, explained that the pre-race favourite got knocked over, had a problem with his arm. He also had a calf problem too. And they started in the dark here at 6:30 in the morning local time. It just works better that way weather-wise. And there was no immediate indication that there was a problem with Bekele. Seaguy Mekinen was the other pre-race favourite. Mekinen had a best time of 2:04.32. There are a couple of pacemakers who took him along, and the early pace was quite frankly frightening. At one stage they were, I think, around 40 seconds ahead of world record pace, so that was probably never going to last. There were the two pacemakers, Kiprop and Kipruto, with Cissé Lema just behind them. As far as the women's race was concerned, the likes of Shure Demise and Meselek Melkamu were the two favourites, but the pacemakers went off really, really quickly, and that was the time. You could just see Bekele feeling his calf there rather gingerly. We didn't know at the time that he'd got an injured hand as well from an incident that happened at the start. And sadly, after 20 kilometres, he had to pull out of the race. But as I say, having spoken just a moment ago to Josh Hermans, it seems that it's not majorly serious, and clearly absolutely no point in him continuing. All he was going to do was aggravate the injury further. No chance of being competitive in the race. Very unfortunate, especially when you hear the circumstances of it from his manager. As far as the women's race was concerned, not too many absentees from the front group. But in the men's race, it was Tamirat Tola who broke away. He lost the last pacemaker at around about the 30-kilometre mark, and after that it was well, a one-man procession to the line. Meanwhile, there was a big story developing in the women's race where Worknesh de Gieve, in her first marathon, was looking like a very live contender. Tola, meanwhile, came home to claim the win in a course record time of 2 hours, 4 minutes and 11 seconds, much to the delight of the adoring Ethiopian fans. Man who took Olympic bronze in Rio takes gold in Dubai and breaks the course record and beats his own personal best by more than 2 minutes. A quite staggering performance. Absolutely fabulous, and one that not too many experts, in truth, really saw coming. Meanwhile, in the women's race, the debutant Worknesh de Gieve won comfortably, around about 15 seconds in hand over Shure Demise, and she's put down a marker. She's going to be a big player in women's marathon over the next few years. Just over 2 hours, 22 and a half minutes. A half marathon specialist, and now she's proved she can do it at the full distance. So there are your two victors on the day. Both outsiders at the start of proceedings this morning. So let's confirm the official results for you. Tamirat Tola wins at a new course record. In fact, 2:04.10 it's been amended to, so a second quicker than we thought. Wazzy Hun in second, but 2.5 minutes back. And then another, well, minute 20 odd to Cisse Lemma. A bit further down, the likes of Ainu and Segai Mekinen. Disappointing performance from him, just about scraping into the top 10. Just a little bit further down, we see some Europeans involved. Pommier of France, Kemboy of Austria in 13th and 15th respectively, and Ashley Miles from Australia into the top 20. In the women's race, confirmation that de Gieve on debut, 2:22.35 the winning time, with Demise in second, 22 seconds back. She had got the gap down to around about 9 seconds at one stage, but then de Gieve went away again. Yevrogual in third, and then a sizable gap to Bekele, Tibu and the rest. But phenomenal effort from de Gieve on debut. Well, delighted to be joined by Guy Horn now, who's probably knows as much about sport in this part of the world as anyone. And once again, I was mentioning earlier, Guy, how this event has progressed. From when it started in 2000, there was barely 1,000 runners. Now there's 30-odd thousand in the various different events. It's become the biggest mass participation sport in this part of the world. And we can see just from the people still walking in front of us, it's a really eagerly awaited event every single year.
It's amazing how it's grown, and it's grown in two ways, because you've got that elite end, and they very early on we have a very clear progression in the Dubai Marathon, and it's been an excellent. And it's interesting that they've used two strategies. They've grown it at the elite end, and they were either smart or lucky when Haile Gebrselassie was invited to take part. He was at his peak. There was an amazing battle between the marathon greats at that time. Konachi had taken the world record in 2005, and you had between Tergat and Gebrselassie this amazing and the change from the Ethiopians to the Kenyans in terms of elite and setting records. So 3 years in a row Gebrselassie won. That spurred an amazing development of the race. It raised its profile and status. Good time of year, fast course, good weather conditions, no other marathons then. And off the back of that, they also developed a really successful 10K. So you have between 2,000 to 4,000 in the first year. Today we've got 18,000 who's just started at 9 o'clock today. So a really clear focus, and if you can do the 10K and you've done a good job, well, now's your chance to step up to the big one. You know, here's your chance. Be on the start line with the greats. It's really well done.
And I think the point is that it's not just the fact that it's a great sporting event and it's fun, and some of them raise some money for charity as well, but in terms of fitness across the whole region, it can only be a good thing. Because the thing is, you do a 4K or you do a 10K, you kind of get that bug. And whether it manifests itself in going on to do a marathon or belonging to a gym or whatever, it doesn't really matter. The most important thing is people stay fit.
And it's a really young age group. If you look at the people who are out on the course there, these are students, these are first-time jobs, young corporate teams out there, you know, in their 20s. Yeah, this is a big day out. It's a big, fun day with some exercise, and you know, they've done a degree of training, in essence. And Dubai's starting to make access to facilities better. So you've got a running track out at Meydan, the horse track, which is Nad Al Shiba, which is in really good condition, lovely part of the world. And then if you have a more leisurely run, coupled with family, you've got the Corniche all along the beach at Jumeirah. So, yeah, really, really nice. We've been going out there with some of the TV crew and the other production people, and it's a very pleasurable place to run for 5, 10, 15K.
Can you give us some idea of what kind of part sport in general plays in this part of the world? Because obviously we know in Dubai there's a thriving horse racing industry. We know that there are world's top golfers come here, tennis players the same. They've had Formula One. Pakistan's cricket team plays in this kind of region. Sport seems to have moved massively from where it was, I don't know, even say 15 years ago.
They've adopted, a sort of a two-tier approach as well. There is the classic approach of the high-end premium sports, so horse racing with the stables that His Excellency Sheikh Rashid bin Mohammed bin Rashid has. All of those facilities are wonderful, and coupled with that, Dubai duty-free tennis and the European Tour golf as well. But they've also created a number of sports that have a different purpose. You have the Super Series badminton here for the next few years. You've had international table tennis. So these are Asian sports for an Asian population. They're easy to play. Plenty of indoor venues in the summer. You can play indoors. And these are targeting a much more Southeast Asian Chinese market to make them feel welcome here as part of the whole holiday experience. And I think the UAE is developing running in one direction with the facilities. You've got the Desert Warrior and the Spartan races here, which are the adventure races, really using the desert and the facilities there and creating, kind of iconic events like that. And at the other end, you still have popular Olympic sports, table tennis. You have the swimming complex at Hamdan as well, which is well provided, the FINA Swimming World Cups there. And then you have the premium sport as well. So it's developing in all these different directions.
And we know obviously that Dubai is made up of so many different nationalities, only probably between 50 and 20% actually from Dubai itself. Do you think the passion for sport that maybe the immigrants have shown has rubbed off on the locals too? I think it has to have happened, isn't it?
I think what's happened is there's been a growth in diversity of sporting interest. So whereas equestrian endurance racing, horse racing, and traditional Arabic culture sports were already embedded here, you've added to that with Asian sports, you've added to that with cricket in the Indian subcontinent, and various other more East Asian sports. So I think it's added to the pot. And I would say, they haven't finished in Dubai. I could see sailing, I can see marine sports. You've got fabulous wind conditions here. There's kite surfing going on. So you've got a lot of water sports that I think are still to develop. I think, and this may sound a bit strange, there will be development of winter sport in this part of the world, which is extraordinary. You have fantastic ski dome over in the Mall of Emirates. There are figure skaters from this part of the world, can you believe, who are in full-time training, and they'll represent the Emirates in the Asian Winter Games and go on further. So you're starting to see a fuller range of sporting interest, not dissimilar to major European countries.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell just, this morning we've been royally entertained by the Ethiopian fan club in the main stand. And we've had so much colour amongst so many people, some of whom obviously have come to cheer on loved ones and friends and work colleagues in the fun races, others who've come to support their fellow countrymen and countrywomen in the main marathon. It's just become a hugely colourful event. I don't think they could have imagined when it started in 2000 that it would turn into this. And in fact, every single year since then, the numbers get bigger. And there's no reason why they won't keep doing that for as far as we can see ahead, pretty much.
And I've never seen an Ethiopian fan club at many other top marathons. And I've been at Tokyo, at London,
Right.
at Paris. But as I was walking in this morning, pretty early, I was behind a large group of Ethiopian 10K runners who
Right.
were all chatting away about who their heroes were and who they wanted an autograph from. So there's clearly a large, educated, working group here who are from Ethiopia, and they're here to support their runners. And this for them is the Tour de France, this is the Champs-Élysées, this is as good as it gets if you're an Ethiopian celebrating your nation's victory. And it's fantastic, and it's the same, it's got that feeling of being on the Copacabana with Brazil playing beach volleyball and a Brazilian crowd. It's really exuberant.
Yeah, they turned that, not that there was reserved seating, but it's kind of just their honorary position. You wouldn't dare go there unless you're wearing the Ethiopian shirt, or you got some flags or balloons or something. The announcement you can hear in the background is the presentation party, which are just arriving to make the presentations for both the men's and the women's race. The only sad thing about it, I guess, guys, it's so long in the planning to get everything right. And it's not just a case of what you see on TV. You've got to shut roads down, you've got to put barriers up, you've got to it needs an army of volunteers to make sure everything works. And it kind of all goes in 3 or 4 hours, and then that's it for a year. But I'm sure we'll be back in 2018.
It's such a part of the calendar here. It's no different to the London Marathon or New York or some of the other ones. I think there's scope to look at the route. I think there's scope to find more spectators out on the course. There's clearly ways that it'll develop to get more support, but the trajectory it's on is a really healthy one, and it's accepted that Dubai Marathon's here to stay. Standard Chartered have been a great supporter for it as well, and no, we wish them all the very best.
Well, Guy, thanks very much indeed. Fascinating to hear that, and so hopefully we'll be back in 2018. But
Thank you
we
very
are
much.
about to have the women's presentation happening right now. And the winner of the women's race, Ruknesh Dagifa, on debut no less. Coming forward to get the gold medal and a little matter of $200,000. Shira Denise in second place.
We're now photographing the dignitaries.
And Anige Yebrukwal in third. That's your 1, 2, 3. But the biggest smile belongs to the debutant winner. What a performance she put up today.
Gentlemen, could I just ask the media to back off a few feet so the other guys can get a photograph, please?
Photographers just taking a few pictures before we get to the presentation for the men's race. And certainly today has proved, if nothing else, that marathon is nothing but unpredictable. Two winners that I don't think too many would have forecast at 6:30 this morning. But sport just has a way of entertaining and surprising in equal measure.
And now the men's race. In third place, Sissi Lemar, 2 hours, 8:04.
Cisse Lema will come up and get his bronze medal first of all.
In second place, Mully Wassahun.
Willie Wassihon was a great performance from him, who was behind Lemmer at one stage, but found a way to get past and held on confidently enough to claim silver.
Second place, Mully Wassahun, Ethiopia. And Julian Winter from Standard Chartered.
And there's the man who's made the headlines today, Tamirat Tola, at 25, a medalist in the 10,000 metres in Rio, and now a gold medalist. His first major marathon success. He smashed the course record, and he broke his own personal best by more than 2 minutes. Absolutely stunning display from Tola. 25 years of age, and there's surely plenty more to come from him at the top level. I suspect that there'll be a few promoters beating a path to his door. Well, it's been a hugely entertaining morning. 2 surprise winners, one of them a debutant winner. And we're going to get the shot of the men's and women's winner on the same podium.
And the line in position yet again as the home distance running in the world.
And I don't think they're about to leave anytime soon.
Congratulations to Tamirat Tola. Once again,
Every year they come, and every year they're just not disappointed, because they see one of their fellow countrymen and women do the business. And the men's course record actually stood for 5 years until Tola broke it today. I just think it can only be a matter of time before the world record goes here. It was about basically a minute and 13 only outside the world record. At one stage, they were about 40 seconds ahead of world record pace. The problem was that the unfortunate injury to Kenenisa Bekele that stopped him competing the under 20k mark. If he had stayed fit, it might have been a different story, but that we'll never know. And certainly Tamirat Tola will take nothing away from him.
Once again, congratulations to everyone on stage.
No wonder he looks so pleased with himself. I hope you've enjoyed our coverage from Dubai this morning. The main headlines: Tamirat Tola wins by a street in the men's race. Worknesh Igefa wins on debut in the women's. Double success for Ethiopia. As I say, I hope you've enjoyed it. From me, Trevor Harris, and our whole outside broadcast crew here in Doha in the UAE. Bye for now.